watching what?
Layman's term.
Amos turn.
Layman's turn.
Oh, Layman's turn.
Yep.
Make sure you be watching it. All right.
That's great. Love it.
Hey guys, welcome to Layman's Terms Podcast, the place where we talk about really big topics using the smallest words possible. I'm Danny the bartender.
And I'm Tommy the trash man.
And together we're just two guys trying to explain the ever-changing world around us the only way that we know how.
So the last episode, we talked about a few things about the supply chain. And I think I might have mentioned, we kind of couldn't really remember about if I mentioned about how many people actually were quitting jobs in the United States. So I think I said I was like, I don't know, like there's like a couple 100,000. Well, it turns out it was like 4.3 million. So it's like 1 in every 4 working Americans
Just
quit their jobs. And I've listened. I know there were some people that commented about the supply issues on the YouTube video. And just in some podcasts I've listened to and some other people, talking about it, I've even learned a little bit more. But then I have a friend of mine that we've known each other for, God, I don't know. It's been at least 15, 17 years or so, something along those lines. And he's been in the retail distribution industry for over the last, several years. So I figured I'd bring my buddy Troy on to talk a little bit more about it. What's going on, Troy?
What's up, Troy?
What's up, man?
So how is life, brother? I haven't seen you in a little bit.
Dude, it's been a whirlwind of a couple years,
Yeah.
So, we've talked about a lot of things. I for the first time in my life got laid off. And then for the second time in my life, I got laid off about months after the first time and moved back above the Mason-Dixon line back into New Jersey. And things are good though. Kid's good. He's just turned 4.
Yeah.
Back in Jersey.
So that's another thing. So you've moved a few times for work. You moved down to Virginia, right?
No, North Carolina. So
North Carolina.
The first move I made out of Philly was up to Connecticut. And then I moved back I moved into Jersey. And then I moved a couple of times inside Jersey. And then in 2016, I moved down to North Carolina, Asheville, North Carolina. Beautiful, in the mountains. The Smoky Mountains were actually on fire when I moved down there. It was a big old, California style fire.
Yeah.
And then moved back a week after the country shut down.
Oh, was it? Oh, so it was right as the pandemic hit.
Yeah, so I was actually driving up the highway. So I closed on my house on a Tuesday, and then I was driving up the highway from North Carolina, and I got a call from my real estate agent that they had just closed the deed office because somebody had gotten COVID. So we weren't sure whether or not my title was going to transfer for my closing on Thursday on my new house in Jersey. So I'm literally driving this U-Haul with my wife behind me in the truck and a pull behind trailer. And we don't know whether or not we're going to actually be able to close. The funds are going to be there. We're going to get a title. We land in Jersey on Thursday and, luckily everything went through, but it was weird. I had to be on one side of the table. My wife had to be on another side of the table. My real estate agent wasn't allowed in the office. My lawyer wasn't allowed in the office. So it was just the title lady in like a hazmat suit and me and my wife on opposite ends of the table. It was the strangest experience of my life.
Yeah.
And then we walk outside and she's got the trunk of her car, a bottle of Lysol, and she's literally taking the Lysol to every sheet of paper that we had just signed.
That's insane.
It was surreal, man. Like even at that point, it was like, wow, this is it's paper and ink.
Well, at that point, they were thinking that it could last on packages and cardboard for like 48 hours.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there were so many different different rumors going around and uncertainties that were just craziness that was going around when it first hit.
Yeah, that's the weird part for me, man. So like this entire pandemic, I've worked in, warehouses that had 4,000 plus people in them. And, we were operating, we had social distancing and we had decreased capacity, but, we were just running different shifts, we were running different things, but we still had 4,000 to 6,000 people working in these buildings. And the company that I was working for, like I was in that warehouse every day.
Yeah.
So middle of the pandemic, all the unknown, the CDC changing everything every 6 hours, like we were just kind of rolling with it. And my experience for the pandemic was completely different. Like I was in these buildings and I was, like, exercising these changes and, helping with contact tracing and, all that stuff. But I never had a work from home moment. Trish is a teacher and, she was teaching from home, which was super weird. We set up this office, so that she could teach from home. But for me, I was in a building, I was working, we were working like normal and nothing really felt any different other than, we had just a little bit of decreased capacity because of the way that we had to set our buildings up.
Yeah. I mean, I was lucky enough. That's one thing that, through the pandemic, I never stopped working. Obviously, like my part-time job at the retirement home, that was put on hold for several months, but, picking up trash, that never stops. So, we were out there and, doing our thing. And, I'll tell you what, man, it's interesting to hear people's different experience. Danny had a different experience, you know what I mean? Being in the bartending industry.
Yeah, I was home for a year. It was the weirdest thing ever for me. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, there was parts of it that were enjoyable on one angle, but for what it did to my industry, I mean, if I could go back in time, I would just refuse to go home.
Yeah. It was weird because like I got laid off twice. I was home for 8 months because I couldn't find a job doing what I do. I knew I was going to have to move out of North Carolina, but I really didn't want to go back to Jersey, New York because of, how expensive it is up here. I wasn't really trying to do that, but ultimately, like, it came to a point where the severance was ending from the first job that I got laid off at. And I had to call the recruiters and be like, all right, Jersey's back on the table. And after that happened, I had an offer within like 30 days. But it's everybody's thing is different. And like, I'm fortunate because, in the beginning when all this stuff, like the government shut everything down, we were doing the right thing. And like, look, we'll suspend your mortgage payments and you don't have to pay this. It made sense because there were so many people we didn't know when we were getting back. It allowed us to kind of, reset financially a little bit. Now I have a balloon note basically on the back end of my mortgage that I'll pay once once I get to that 30 years. I'll just have a big payment towards the end. But all that stuff made sense, and then it got silly. And once everything started to kind of open back up a little bit, it was like, oh, you're still paying me. And it was harder to find people, and it was harder to get back, and everybody kind of felt some type of way, and everybody felt a different type of way. And you kind of have to walk that line because you just spent the last year working in a building or working in buildings with all these people in the epicenter of the entire pandemic in this country between New York and New Jersey. And like I was going into Manhattan for my first job to pick up the mail at our corporate office because nobody else wanted to drive in there.
Yeah.
And it was cool. I got to park right outside the office, went up the elevator, got in there, grabbed the stuff, left, drove out. I was in and out of the city in like 15 minutes. But it was also weird because it was like Armageddon. Like you just literally looked down the street and there was nobody there.
Oh yeah, and New York is notorious. Like I got a tattoo up in New York. And as soon as you get out of the Holland Tunnel, from the Holland Tunnel to my tattoo shop that I would go to is probably on a normal traffic day, like when I would get out of there at night sometimes, it's 15 minutes. But normal traffic, I've sat an hour and a half, 2 hours at times.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that alone had to be just crazy. I mean, even just images that we saw of Times Square and everything, it was just like empty.
It was everywhere, man. Like every part of the city was like that. We were building an office down in Brooklyn. Our corporate office was like in Soho, I guess. It was like the lower end of Soho.
Mm-hmm.
We were moving it down to Brooklyn. You know, we had office space up in, you know, the Times Square area, but like nobody was anywhere. Nobody was on the street. Nobody was even walking their dogs. Like the entire thing was just, it was like, I can't even describe it. I mean, I was fine because I was in and out in 15 minutes. That was the thing I hate the most about New York, because everything takes you 2 hours to get to.
Right.
You know, 10 minutes away, 2 hours.
No, but it's funny we're all saying this because I was actually thinking the other day, like in retrospect, I live right in the city. Now, Baltimore is not Manhattan by any means, but but like one thing we kind of forget is like when this first went down, like the first even couple of months, like I would go outside my house and it was just weird. It was like you'd go outside just to you know, for whatever reason, and you would see one or two people possibly in whatever you were traveling to do. It was just eerie feeling of how empty everything was.
It was apocalyptic, man.
Until the summer started. If you remember, like then what happened was, I remember what started pissing me off was that then it would be like nice weather and it'd be like a Monday and it was just like people were everywhere.
Right.
Even though but like in that winter and like during the riots and shit, it was like you would go out and be like, hey, what's going on out here?
Well, I think as long as you were rioting, you were immune to COVID. I think that's
what I would do.
Works.
Instead of going out with a mask on and stuff, I would go out with like riot gear on so that I wouldn't get the COVID.
Yeah, that's how that worked. It's kind of like when you go to a restaurant, you sit down, it just flies right over your head. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Where's your mask? You guys we're rioting. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, guys, what can I get for you?
Yeah. Where's your mask? No, I have a mozzarella stick in my mouth. I'm fine. I'm good. No COVID here.
So in New York City now, you have to actually show your Vax card to sit down at a restaurant.
Yeah, I hear that's killing the business though, believe it or not.
Bro, like it is the weirdest thing. So like I took my son to this like Pixar putt place with his friend over the weekend. And like we're going into a diner, right? Like a diner, not like a fancy restaurant, a fucking diner. And we walk in there and she's like, vaccine cards? And we're like, come on, okay. You know, like,
right.
You know, and like, it's unreal. And so then, you know, the funny part about it is I took, you know, some of my team out to dinner tonight, and we go to this like Italian place where they like, just don't give a fuck. And so like we walk in, sit down, order our food, like they're not going to make anybody show anything. Like, it's just like, nobody's checking up on this stuff. And then, you know, the thing that's going on in New York right now, and this is the scary part, is so de Blasio just mandated that all city workers get vaccinated. They have until Friday to at least get the first shot. And if they're not vaccinated by Monday, they go on unpaid leave. So that includes FDNY, NYPD, EMS, the entire thing. So like there are parts and precincts in New York City Police Department that are like 40% vaccinated. So they're going to lose 60% of their staff to an unpaid leave. And like they pushed it up to the Supreme Court, and like the Supreme Court basically was like, nah, like they can do whatever they want.
Right.
And it's wild.
Well, isn't that wasn't that who all the protesters were? Was it kind of like EMS and police and stuff just recently that when they were walking over the Brooklyn Bridge or whatever?
Yeah, but like that was only part of the issue. Like the fraternal order of police, like the union that's representing them, and you know, all those guys, like they used to hold all the power, and like now it's all stripped. And it's just, they're in this weird spot where like like the government and the city of New York is basically just saying, bring it, right? Like,
Yeah.
you don't want to lose 60% of your cops in New York when we have this many desperate people out there.
Well, that's the
Yeah,
thing that
I just saw a video of Ted Cruz, and I forget if he was mentioning Chicago or New York, but he went at I think the guy was maybe the director of the CDC or no, maybe it wasn't the director of the CDC. I don't know who the hell the guy. It's Biden appointed this guy. I don't know. I don't know who the hell he was. But anyway, they were talking, and he's like, so you're willing to let a third of the police force walk because of these COVID mandates? And he was kind of obviously trying to dance around the question. And he was like, well, there was X amount of police officers that died because they were unvaccinated. And, he just danced around the question, didn't answer. But that's crazy to think, because he was like, the murder rates in Chicago are skyrocketing. Murder, crime, and now you're about to lose all of 1/3 of your police force.
well, you've also already demoralized your police force. So but like they're already hurting, because what I've seen anyway in Baltimore after the 2015 riots is, once they went through that, like a lot of the little things that police departments are going through now, we've been going through here for the past couple of years after our riots, which was this whole like decriminalization thing, where it was like all of a sudden the police weren't actively pursuing anything. They were more or less like showing up to calls, but they weren't getting involved in things on their own, because they were kind of already put down to this small force of people that weren't veterans, because all the veterans left when the city didn't have their back in the riots. So I would say like New York probably lost any of the people that have been there for 20 years that were hanging in for 1, 2, 3, 4 more years to try and get more out of their pension, probably boogied. Now you're down to, this demoralized police force that's being told by de Blasio not to do this, that, or the other thing. And now you're telling half of them to leave because they're unvaccinated. I don't understand this, dude. Nobody with common sense would think this is a good idea.
Yeah, no. It's weird, because like I've worked in and with these departments my entire professional career. Like, I work in loss prevention. This is what I do. Like, thank God when I started my career, there weren't camera phones. We'll just put it that way. I could tell you war stories, all day long here, but like, I was in Philly when I started, and so I've been working in and around police my entire career, and I can't tell you how many people now at this point, I talk to, or they call me and they're like, hey, are you hiring, or how can I get into your industry? Like, I'm just done. Like, between the policies and between them not being able to do their job, like cops aren't even allowed to stop people now. Cops aren't even allowed to tell, like, if you basically have to murder somebody to get arrested at this point. And who knows when you'll actually go to court, because you're going to get an RSR, you're going to get released. You're going to go out there because they don't want to house people, or they can't house people. Everything, nobody wants to accept consequences for their actions anymore. Like, I'm no saint, and I've done a lot of dumb shit in my life. But I always knew choice A comes with this consequence, and if I get caught, that's what's going to happen. And so. And if you
get away with, like, if you get a break,
mm-hmm.
you got a break. You didn't think that it was deserved. You got a break. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. And that's the thing about it, is like, every time that I've ever gotten out of it, it's because I approach the situation. I'm like, look, yeah, you caught me doing 80 miles an hour in a 55, or yeah, you caught me doing what you're talking to me about. And, now when you say that to a cop, they're like, wait, what? you know, because they're just used to people like denying it or telling them that they're racist because they're even approaching them. They're just in this like super bad spot. And, you know, part of it's like, I don't know, like it's a parenting thing. Like I didn't really appreciate what my parents did and how tough they were with me until I was like 25. And I remember calling my dad when I was 25. I got my first big boy job. And I was like, you know, I gave you a lot of shit for this my entire life, but like, I get it. I understand why you did it. I understand the structure. Like, thanks. It was like a weird conversation, but like everything kind of clicked. Now, you know, there was some stuff in the middle there that I had to get through, um, but you know, now in today's day and age, and like Trish sees this with her kids, like it used to be, what did my kid do? And now it's like, what didn't you do?
Yeah.
Right.
And you know, it's hard, you know, like everything that they're doing now and everything that we did when we were growing up, like it didn't matter if we were wrong or right, or if the teacher was lying. Like the teacher even called, you were in trouble.
Yeah.
And now it's like we try to play this game to figure out like what they didn't do.
Well, who in their right mind? Like that's, I guess using the teacher is a great example because that's the way I see it too. It's like now the world is filled, like I've had situations with people in my family where I would see maybe an aunt of mine like running down to the school and attacking teachers when I know damn right my cousin was wrong, you know? And I would think, man, she's crazy. You know what I mean? Now the world is filled with those people where it's like they just, if a teacher happens to do something out of the box, they get to rip that person apart. And that stops anybody in authority from trying to help or trying to do anything different. They just stick to the, you know, why get involved with anything when you just, it's your ass on the line. It's the same thing with cops and everything else. It's like, I know a guy who tried to save a guy. He was a paramedic, and whatever he did in the process of like trying to save the guy, he ended up losing his job because they, you know, like the dude was basically dying and he saved his life. But in turn, the dude had a broken back and they said he shouldn't have moved him or whatever. I feel like the system has kind of become, you know, in that person's case, what he did actually saved the guy's life. But in turn, because the guy lived with a broken back, it was that dude's ass. So now people just follow protocol, you know?
Yeah. And, you know, going off of all these stories, there's a few that I just came across. I just saw Eliane Omar. She was mentioning that the crime spikes in Minneapolis are due to the officers not doing their jobs correctly. And I was thinking, well, how in the world are they supposed to do it correctly? When they do their job, they're racist, they're whatever you want to call them. So then you defund the police because of that. And now that they're defunded and lacking training and lacking the manpower, now you're blaming that on them as well. So there's like there's a no-win situation. And then I also saw this school where there was about, in a matter of 2 weeks, there was about 30 arrests, fighting daily, guns, whatnot. And a group of, I don't know, several fathers decided to go to these schools and sit and watch these kids. So they had, you know, they made up some shirts like dads on duty or whatever it was. And all of a sudden, the whole mood in the school changed. And talking about what Troy was saying with structure and calling his father, you know, that's something that we take for granted in this country, and the importance of structure and the importance of fathers in the home. And I just did it. It brought me to tears. Like I was so moved by it. And, you know, they were talking to students, and the students, there was a respect there because they were like, well, you know, when you're at home and your mother or your father gives you that look and you just know like, oh shit, like I fucked up. You know what I mean? And it was a complete turnaround for that school. And I was like, dude, imagine what we could do with common sense. You know, obviously I don't know how these fathers are able to do it. I mean, I know obviously, like they were talking about, some of them take shifts and whatnot, but we try to over politicize everything in this country. And we think, putting new policies into play are the fix. And it's not. I mean, the government just pretty much ruins everything. When we could like most people can fix their own problems. Like that school, 9 times out of 10, the school is going to load up on security guards. They're going to load up with metal detectors and whatever, the normal protocol would be. They're going to teach certain agendas, whatever. And all it took was a couple of stern fathers to just stand outside. The students are walking by, they're cracking jokes with the kids, they're shaking their hands, they're giving them hugs. That's not something that you're going to get taught in college, and that's not something that a politician's going to come up with. That's just basic humanity, and it's just all fucked up anymore.
But I even think that they're trying to see, like, I saw the same thing, and I thought the same thing. Actually, it was amazing. It was really cool, and I don't have something to rebut that. I mean, that was an amazing situation. But I also think though that when you were kind of saying that story, isn't that another one of the no-nos these days? Like you can't say that a kid needs a father or that's somehow something wrong.
Well, I mean,
no, like in other words, people used to make the argument that a lot like these fatherless homes are to blame for some things, and now all of a sudden that argument is racist. Like they just attack. Like you're not allowed to address the problems. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, crazy. And that's something that we talked about on this. I mean, you can make broad statements, and politicians can come up with critical race theory or teachers and all just these outlandish ideas just to kind of virtue signal, but it doesn't address the actual problem. And in many ways, it just makes the situation worse.
Well, let me ask you this, Tom, because we haven't talked about it. Do you happen to know what's going on in that Loudoun County school district situation with the guy's daughter that got raped?
I know a little bit about it.
Well, you remember all when all these like parents were going down to the schools and they had the major event that they showed was this one dad getting like kind of pushed around by police and he was fighting them back. Then instantaneously there was all that got spread nationally that like that's when they started calling anyone who goes to the schools terrorist. Well, I thought maybe.
Well, just to address, for our listeners and Troy, I don't know were you familiar with the situation at all?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it basically came down to a female, the father's daughter was sexually assaulted or raped in the bathroom by a transgender.
Well, no, you're not allowed to say that. So we gotta say that for YouTube because that's why Crowder just got put off. It was a boy in a skirt.
Okay.
You can't say transgender. That's what this whole thing was about because it went against the policy that they were trying to kind of start. They were doing that. Transgenders were allowed to use the girls' bathroom. The dad went down to protest that policy because he had just got that in. He just found that out from the school that had happened to his own daughter. They covered that up and highlighted this guy as some maniac protester. So I think now they're in trouble because then what happened was they were covering that up and the kid went and did the same thing again a week later. So the only reason why I'm saying this though is just like, that's how crazy it is that they were a school board was actively trying to cover up the incident because it went against a policy that they wanted to enforce, right. Which doesn't even just think about how absurd that is an incident in a bathroom where a student was sexually assaulted was something that the people at the school board wanted to cover up because they wanted transgenders to be able to use the girls' bathroom. Yeah. Like that's the craziest thing I've ever heard in my life.
Exactly. And that's what I mean. We're getting away from humanity and we're trying to solve human interactions, normal human interactions with political solutions. And it's just not working. Um, but Troy, so, being in the line of work that you're in, and kind of some of the things that we were talking about last week on the podcast, something I actually brought up too, where with all these people quitting their jobs, and I mean, anywhere you go, all I'm seeing is hiring signs absolutely everywhere. And I was saying, I don't see how you're getting people to go back to work at Wendy's or at most jobs that are paying $15 an hour, whatever the case may be, but for low wages. Um, and I'm concerned because I'm like, no matter where I go, whether it's to the Rite Aid, to the Wawa, to Chipotle, it seems like there's always an issue. There's this, the shelves are not stocked. They don't have the staff. So where do we go from here? Like, do you see anything with like kind of like in your industry and the companies that you've worked for and whatnot? Like, do you see how it's possible that anything kind of goes back to normal?
Yeah, so look, there's two separate issues, right? So the labor shortage is one side, right? And then the supply chain issues are the other. And like they work together,
Right.
but like the fact that your shelves are empty doesn't have to do necessarily with the labor shortage. They don't have anything to put out on those shelves because what's happening and what this is currently forcing companies to do is to become more efficient with less. And the longer that they do that, the more profitable that they get because now they have to hire less people to do the same amount of work that they were doing before. So now all you're going to do is force these companies to get leaner, faster, more efficient, and put things in that automate processes that human beings used to do, right? So
Right.
you're forcing companies to innovate where they would have just thrown a body at it before, right?
Right.
When we talk about the supply chain shortage, and actually both of these points have the exact same issue, but when you talk about the supply chain issue, this has been going on for a long time. This has been a slow burn since about 2017. In 2017, there was a strike on the West Coast in the ports that created supply chain issues and backups that were about half of what we're seeing right now. But what you have to understand is that the way that these ports work in terms of bringing these ships in and unloading those containers is that they work in a continuous cycle, so nothing is waiting. And the only way that they can get this stuff across the country and get it to where it needs to go is to keep that constantly moving. You have shipping containers that are coming over and they may be a third of the way full because the company wants to pay just to have their stuff on that shipping container. There are shipping containers that are mixed and then they get split out at the port and sorted, and then they get sent to whatever company's warehouse that they want to do that. So when the dock workers went on strike back then, they created a 6-month backlog. So it was mostly affecting like the specialty retail fashion side of the world because these companies are ordering stuff 6 to 8 months or 9 months in advance, and they're making these big bets, but they couldn't get it into their stores. So when that happens and you miss an entire season, then you got to put everything on clearance, and then you get these warehouses that are full. And what's going on right now is the result of, and I've been talking to people about this since we started this pandemic. Once we had that semiconductor shortage and the world shut down, this is the problem with, being so reliant and people focusing so much on cost, right? So Tommy, one of the things that like you and I, when we first met back in 2004 or whatever it was, one of the things that we did is like, we bought Lucky brand jeans, right? Like it was the only jeans that we wore. I probably still have a pair from 2004.
Yeah.
I bought a pair 2 years ago and they ripped down the center in like 6 months,
Yeah.
right? The jeans are cheaper now, but then they're cheaper.
Right.
So we got away from quality. Everybody wanted everything cheaper, faster, and tomorrow. So it forced companies from focusing on quality, getting quality goods and services in countries that were more expensive to operate. And then it pushed everything out, which forces everything to come in. So when they close all this stuff off, you're going to have this backup. So when they closed the world shut down because we were trying to stop the spread. We didn't know what was going on. All those factories shut down. And then they had to ramp up production because it's not going to change people's projections. And the projections actually were wild because companies were saying, well, once people can get out of their house, they'll just spend like they used to, because we're going to be in our houses for 14 days to stop the spread. And then 14 days turned into 14 months, and all of this stuff just continued to go and go and go and go. And different countries were doing different things, and each part of the supply chain was affected by that country's rules and regulations. Mm-hmm. So what we're dealing with now at the ports is partially as a result of the labor shortage, but it's been going on for 4 years. Nobody just wanted to talk about it. We have 80,000 truck drivers that we're short in this country right now. We were 30,000 short before the pandemic started. Now, people don't want to sit in their trucks all day because they're getting a check from the government. You can make a ton of money driving a truck, a long haul trailer, across this country. There are long haul tractor trailer drivers that are making 200 grand a year.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to do it because everybody wants to get paid to do what they want to do. And we live in this world where people don't have to work for things, right? So people ask me all the time, like, how did you get promoted? I worked harder than everybody else. How did you get the job that you have now? I worked to get it. But this supply chain issue that we have right now is going to slow burn. And, I don't know when we're going to get to a point where people want to understand that jobs are worth something. And if you want a better job, if you want to make more money, you got to put the work behind it. Don't get mad at Elon Musk because he's the richest in the world. Don't get mad at, Jeff Bezos because he put a rocket ship into space. These guys out hustled and outworked you, and that cost them something, and so they made a lot of money doing it. But
right.
I don't deserve a part of that. I'm not entitled to part of that. I didn't put in those hours. I didn't put in that work. And we live in a world right now where people expect things.
Yeah, one of the things that I heard recently about the in California with the ports, that there was an issue, which I don't understand if this is something that's just new regulations or this was always an issue, but apparently there's something to do with the running out of room, stacking the shipping containers. They're only allowed to go 2 high, which in certain areas you can go 6 high. That's something that I kind of didn't understand how that was an issue now, if it was new regulations or what that problem was, but I kind of thought that was a little bit interesting. They just don't have the room or the manpower to maneuver.
Well, apparently there's so many little things, even with what you're saying, like that could be one. And then isn't there something with they're phasing out an old container, that there's a new kind of container with some type of chip in it that companies are trying to phase out. So therefore they don't want to take them on. So right now, apparently in California, there's a lot of empty containers. They're I was reading something where it was if you have an empty container, they won't let you take it off. But if you can't take off the empty container, then you also can't take off the full containers that are behind it.
Yeah.
There's that's one thing that from what it just seems to be there are so many things stacked against this supply chain issue. So I guess something I'm thinking as you're saying this is, when you said that this has kind of happened and you seem to have a good understanding of the overall situation. Is this something that we're going to get out of?
Yeah, eventually, but it's going to be a slow way out, right? So what Tommy's talking about is kind of what I was talking about in the beginning. So the ports work because there's a workflow. The ports work because they're getting stuff out as fast as they're taking it off. And so like the areas, like the working areas of the facility, not the storage areas, there are different rules for that. And because the different equipment that they're using can only operate to a certain height. And if they go beyond that, then, they're just going to backlog everything. So it really just has to do with the way that particular port flows, right? And so the dock workers are responsible. So the people that are working upstream are responsible for getting everything out of there so that the people downstream that are getting this stuff off the boat, can cycle that stuff through. And so there's different priority levels on every ship. So, you have stuff that gets that you're paying more to get through faster. And then, the really complicated part of this is that once it comes in, it's got to go through a customs process the majority of the time because it's coming from, foreign country. And, then you have to pay duties on it. So they have to make sure that everything's there to make sure that you're paying the proper taxes and all that stuff. So it's really complex. And so the production issues are ramping up faster than the back end of the supply chain. So they're producing goods the same, if not better than they were pre-pandemic, which means that it's not going to come down to having the supply of the goods that we need. It's going to come down to being able to get those things to where they're going. So when you talk about 80,000 truck drivers that we're short right now, I think that's the current number. That's a significant number of line haul drivers. That's a significant, it has a significant impact for something that used to cost companies $3,500 to drive across the country to put it in a warehouse. It's costing them almost 10 grand now. And so those costs have to go somewhere, and companies don't have the leverage anymore. It's all the trucking companies, right? And everybody knows. So all it's doing is driving up the cost for somebody that needs to put this stuff on their shelf, which is all ultimately going to be passed to you and me on the back end. So it's going to be fixed, but it's going to be a while.
Yeah.
I think the big issue is that California is just fucked up. And I have a conspiracy theory.
Oh, here we go.
I think what's happening over there is all these shipping containers are loaded with fucking Chinese soldiers that are just ready to storm the shores of fucking California, which I'm fine with.
Just bring it on at this point. Just let me know what's going on.
Just let them fucking storm California. Take it the fuck out.
Take it. It's yours.
Yeah, and you could just have California can turn to China. I'm fine with that. I mean, they already have missiles that can fly around the fucking globe. So as long as they're on our home base, well, I mean, I would say that I was fairly confident in our president. I don't know. He knows what day it is, but at least if they're on our home base, let them take off California. And I mean, it's going to break off in the ocean anyway. So, what are you going to do?
Look, so my son's 4 years old. If you point to a map of the United States of America and you point to the state of California and you ask him, what is this?
Yeah.
He will tell you communism.
Yeah.
Nice. He's right.
He's right.
He's right.
He's learning quick.
That's homeschooling for you.
That's it.
Yeah. But dude, it's crazy, man. Like all these things that are kind of happening, that's just like the people take for granted.
But here's the thing that I don't understand though. And this is the part that scares me. But the thing is if it is policy, if it's a lot of policy issues and whatever, you would think that somebody would step in and allow some of these policies to be broken. Like if for some reason they have a thing of no more stacking more than too high, how about just for right now, you stack higher than too high,
Yeah, I guarantee you that there are auditors that are looking the other way to try to get stuff going, but it's so backed up, Danny, that like even doing that isn't going to fix the problem. Right?
Well, no, I mean, and I, of course, but what I mean is, it seems to me like a lot of this not could have, like, it looks like it was going to happen either way. I mean, but at the same time, I feel whether it was politics or whatever the hell it is, you know, it's even like DeSantis saying, send the ships over here. Now, I know that that's not that simple. I guess they would have to go back up and back through the Panama Canal or something. But it's like, it just seems to me like nobody, although we all knew this was coming. Like, I was talking about this crisis happening for 4 months and I don't know shit about it. And then all of a sudden, all at once, it was news. But clearly it could have been news 4 months ago, but people didn't want anyone to know. And I feel like those same people that knew what was coming, but were trying to avoid it becoming a public issue, at the same time weren't doing anything about it, or weren't taking any steps at all to prevent any of it, or at least like you said, I mean, there's nothing going to happen. We're going to have a problem with this supply chain. However, I feel that people were choosing to look the other way, to hide it, knowing eventually the shit was all going to hit the fan. You know, and it's like the same thing with the border in a sense. It's like they know that shit is happening, and it isn't like they're trying to do something to fix it and they're trying to hide it simultaneously. They're just acting like it's not happening, and they're not doing anything to fix it. You know, and that's kind of how I feel that some of this stuff scares me, because I don't know, man. Like, I feel like a lot of it is purposefully done, dude. I feel like somebody wants some of this shit to go down.
Well,
Yeah,
I know. I have.
Oh.
No. I was gonna say I have a feeling that DeSantis knows that those ships are loaded with Chinese.
So you should bring them over here.
And he's like, "Let's go." Between the crocodiles and the fucking patriots over here, bring it the fuck on.
You read that same fucking crazy conspiracy I did, because that's a real conspiracy.
Is it really?
Did you know that?
No, that's real.
That's a real conspiracy, but not one that I bought into.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, just look up like "be prepared for war" or some shit on Rumble. You'll find that one.
I'm sorry, Drew. What were you gonna say?
So think about this, right, Danny? So like, I'm going to feed your conspiracy theory here, right?
There are fucking
not the Chinese soldiers one, right? The other one, the purposefully done.
The truth is out. But so think about it this way, right? Like, so if they started talking about the supply chain issue 4 months ago, think about what effect that would have on these large retailers, these large publicly traded companies, the long-term impact that would have on somebody's IRA, their 401k, or just their privately traded stock, or, you know, their publicly traded stock options. Like, you know, the detriment to the economy that would have if you start to talk about that at that point. It was already fucked. So if talking about it being more fucked by Christmas time, you know, like, they're buying themselves a little bit of time to try to fix it between now and then. Like, if they can make it a little bit better, then they don't put all these companies into the toilet financially. They don't put these people's retirement into the toilet financially. So like, do I think some of that's intentional? Yeah. Do I think some of it is well-intentioned? Because you don't want to look at what happened last year when it came to fucking toilet paper, when we thought we were going to be home for 14 days. Or think about every time that like it snows, people go out and they buy bread and eggs and milk and toilet paper. Like, we're going to be in our houses for years. Like, people panic buy. And so like, if you start it in a certain way, like telling people to panic because there's something that's going on and they're not going to be able to get stuff, then like, you know, I think sometimes they're making these calculated decisions because they know what the alternative is.
Well,
right?
no, I 100%. I know what you're saying, and I agree with you. And what I'm saying though is, I'm not saying they should have told us, but remember what I was saying, like even about the border, where it's like, it's one thing that they don't want us to know, and they have their reason. But my question is what were they like? If you don't want us to know because you're buying time, then what the fuck are you doing? Were you doing anything to fix it? I mean, remember our head of transportation is on paternity leave right now. You know what I mean? So it's like, who is doing what about what here? You know? And I'm not saying that like I know, like I do agree what you're saying. Like, you don't want to cause anybody, if you were to say, you know, that to retailers, even forget what it could do to them financially in the stock market. But it's like, if I was a small business and you know, toilet paper is going to be backed up because I know it's there. I'm going to order as much toilet paper as I can as a business, which would just add to the global problem. That I can understand as well. But I just hope that somebody, whoever was actively aware of what was going on, was also actively trying to do their best to fix the problem.
I think war is inevitable. I think that's what's going to happen. When you say when you talk about if this is this intentional, I think that we could be headed towards a war in the next couple of years, because what happens after war? There's usually prosperity, right? We gotta build back better, right? That's what's going to happen.
We're going to build on a war economy. That sounds like a great idea.
Well, I mean, that's helped us before, right? I mean, do I think that the elites, the people that are in charge, the millionaires, politicians, bankers, do you think? I certainly don't think that they care. I mean, they've sent soldiers to war for years and years and years, and they don't give a shit how many people die. So, I mean, just look what Fauci was doing to Beagles. You know what I mean?
No, well, just even look at like Biden just bombarded fucking drone strike like 15 innocent people.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that we haven't always done that. I'm just saying they didn't give a fuck that they did it, and neither has anyone else that's ever done it.
You know, we talked about Fauci being a made man. He was like, what do you want from me? I kill some Beagles. You know, what do you want? I'm Dr. Fauci. It's for science. You going to question me? I kill Beagles.
The Beagle killer.
That's one of those things where like, so what are we learning from that? What are we learning from sandflies eating the heads off of Beagles? Like,
that was the whole thing that people were saying, where like that literally was for nothing. That was just like for nothing.
We're just bored that day. We're like, yeah. I wonder. It kind of reminds me. What was that movie? Cabin in the Woods. Did you ever see that?
I believe so, but go ahead.
Troy, did you ever see that Cabin in the Woods?
I think so, but I have no idea where the hell this is going.
Okay, well, all right. So bear with me here. So basically,
is there beagles in it?
No. So there was a government institution that basically made a deal with the older gods, and they made sacrifices to the older gods to keep kind of peace in the world. You know what I mean? So they sacrificed human beings, right? And they made bets on it. Like they would be like, oh, this person, they're going to choose this lever and it's going to bring up the swamp thing. And he's going to kill, this girl when she's getting laid with a fucking a fork through the ear or whatever. You know what I mean? And they would take bets on it. And I think that's what the scientists and Fauci were fucking laying down bets, like in Goodfellas, like in the fucking, or not in Goodfellas. What was it? Put him in the bathroom. What fucking movie was that? What fucking movie? Come on, help me out, guys. Are we like here? Come on.
I was trying to stick up with Cabin in the Woods. I was just starting to realize that I know the movie.
All right.
So me somewhere else.
So that's what I'm saying. Fauci's rolling dice in the corner. Like he's like, hey, how many Beagles can we get away with? How long is it going to take for these fucking fleas?
Oh yeah, put him in the bathroom. I get it. Go ahead.
These sand fleas to eat off his head. You know what I mean? I think that's I think that's what's going on. Like they're just bored. They're bored on a fucking Tuesday, and they're like, let's grab some Beagles and see what happens.
If that really was for nothing, if there was no scientific gain from that, imagine pitching that to each other like two scientists. Like, oh yeah, we'll just get some bagels and we'll fucking take their. What do we do if they bark? Oh, we'll just take their vocal cords out.
Yeah.
Well, what are we going to do if they want to move? Well, we'll bolt their head down to the ground.
And these are the people that are making health decisions for your 5 to 11-year-olds right now. And the CDC was just saying something like, I think it was Project Veritas maybe that came out with a video. And they were like, well, of course, like, how else are we going to find out? We got to get people vaccinated to see what happens.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
how fucking stupid is that?
So, like, yeah, that sounds like a great idea.
Yeah.
I think that's how they convince people in the Tuskegee experiment.
That's probably.
Yeah.
Right.
Or just shoot you with syphilis. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
You're,
what's going to happen? Well, we'll never know unless we try it.
I feel like that's the story of this country right now. We're just throwing shit at the wall to see if it sticks. And every aspect, whether it's education, the economy, COVID, it's just like, let's just see.
No, but dude, you know what I really feel? It's like they went all in. Like, it's like somebody went all in on a lie somewhere. I'm not even talking about with the pandemic. And it's like, they just can't admit that there's a possibility that they were wrong. So every time that they get pinned against a wall, they double down. They just keep doubling down. You know what I mean? Like like the vaccinated thing. Like, they'll never come out and say, okay, wait. Maybe we shouldn't force the vaccination on the airline worker. It's like they just, instead of taking that pushback and saying this might be a bad idea, they just come back harder. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
I don't know if you guys know this, but nobody's wrong anymore. I'm right, and you're more right, but nobody's actually wrong anymore. That's not how this shit works anymore.
I guess I don't know what works anymore. I feel like I should have a pronoun somewhere in there.
Well, what is right?
I don't know.
Like, dude, like, just weirdly, the trials or the hearings, whatever, from when they were like debating over they were like talking to the FBI or the Attorney General or something about the riots, and this was from Trump days, and I'm listening, like, it just was on, and I was just listening to it, and I thought I was in fucking like crazy town, like hearing the Democrats talk about how like basically the Republicans were there to talk about why the police and why the government agencies, whatever police force wasn't doing, the federal agents and all weren't doing their job enough to protect the people of Oregon or Portland. And then the next person's argument was that they wanted to know why the federal agencies weren't doing enough to protect the protesters in Oregon. And I'm like, wait a second, bro. Like, what are we living in, fucking crazy town? And it was so weird because that was so old. And just to have that on and be listening and just realize, like, that was the crazy world we were in. That's how crazy it was, that there were people standing up for the people that were burning down a police station.
Well, to kind of go off what you said, it in the immortal words of Barry Weiss, has the world gone mad? Well, the world has gone mad, actually. And there's two headlines that I thought were pretty interesting that I just saw recently, today, actually. So the Mail Online News, lesbians feel pressured into having sex with trans women over fears of being branded transphobic, while those who refuse face death threats, claim activists. So, like, how do you figure that one out? Can a lesbian just be a lesbian and just love a woman? Now she's got to go for, I don't even know how to say it. I don't even know what to say in that situation because I don't know what's going to get us fined or whatever. But then I also, there was another report, which I have to get to. Smart toilets, Afghan book clubs, lizard treadmills, as a new report exposes 55 billion in government waste.
Yeah, that's the lizard on the treadmill. Rand Paul asked about what that was about.
Yeah, like, I'm just like, so smart Smart toilets. I don't even know what the fuck a smart toilet is. Like, does it just flush itself when you get off the seat? Like, how does that work?
You flush it from the other room. You blow the bathroom up and flush it from the other room.
Like,
no, a smart toilet just goes like like everything you do, it just tells you. Oh, that was a shit. Oh, thanks, toilet.
Yeah, like, and you got to spend millions upon millions. Like, are you that
the toilet?
Like, can you imagine? I mean, that's something like I can imagine Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk, super rich people, to have those types of things, those types of luxuries, but politicians, like, what do they need for? Why do they need to spend our money to get fucking smart toilets? And then I saw another one from The Root. Straight black men are the white people of black people. These are actual articles. So these when we ask the question, like, has the world gone mad? Like, what is the answer? What is real? What's fake? What's the truth? I'm right, you're right. I don't know anymore. There's no answer to it.
But I think that's the fucking point too, dude. That's what I think. I think that whatever, I personally think that there is everything it can't be so methodical if it doesn't have a purpose. And from what people have been saying, the purpose of most of this is to leave you in a state where you don't know what reality is, or you don't know, there is no basis, there is no there's no truth. And that's where we're left. Like, if you remember when we started this podcast, one of the things that we were talking about was like, can you protect, if you're in a car and protesters are attacking you, can you just drive? And we didn't even, we started to, like, it's like these little things were happening and we were losing touch with, like, well, what is legal? What's illegal? You know what I mean? And if you look at what's going on just in the police, with the police and everything. I mean, in Chicago, they have two people firing guns at each other and they both get arrested, but they drop charges on them and they call them mutual combatants. Like, what the fuck is reality?
Was that real?
Yeah, I thought I brought that up on here.
No, I never heard.
And here's how much we live in crazy world.
Was it a duel? Like, it was like an old school duel where they took like steps and they turned around. Like, I feel like
that would be a mutual. I would be okay with that being allowed.
I would be fine. Like, if they had like one single shot and they were like, in 10 steps, we shall fire upon one another. Yes. I'd be okay with that.
Well, unless somebody turned around at 9 steps.
Well, yeah,
that would be illegal.
Cheating. But
that would be illegal.
Everybody's cheating at everything anyway anymore. So, like, who the fuck cares?
But no, that's a real thing. And I think the craziest part about that was that Lori Lightfoot was furious. Like, Lori Lightfoot, that was too much for her. So she was mad at it was the same prosecutor that let just Juicy Smollett go. So
Juicy Smollett.
Yeah. So but think about that, dude. So I guess like, if you live in Chicago, what is the law? Like, we were both trying to kill each other, so that's legal now. I don't understand, but that was a real thing. You can look that up. I mean, the prosecutor refused to press charges and called them mutual combatants, which was just something she made up. Like, it ain't like that was something in the books that she could refer to. She just pulled that out of her ass.
I don't know what's going on anymore, but who I really, really feel bad for are people like Troy, because Troy has a 4-year-old. So like, what in the world is the world going to look like for your 4-year-old son by the time he's 15, 14?
So look, here's kind of the way that I approach this, right? Because if you look at it that way, it's kind of fucking depressing.
Yeah, of course it is.
Yeah. So look, man, it starts with one person, and like, the way that I'm raising my son is taking the things in my childhood that made me who I am today, the things that, I took for granted, And I have people ask me all the time, like, well, why do you discipline your son? He's 4. And I'm like, well, because you got to teach structure, standards, what's acceptable, what's not, consequences. Like if he doesn't eat his dinner, like, no, you can't watch TV. If he doesn't eat his dinner, no, you can't have a lollipop. Like as much as he cries or throws a fit, like that's not going to make it better. And I talk to my son like a human being. Like, I don't baby talk him. I don't baby him. If he falls on the playground after I told him not to do something, get up. It's not rub some dirt on it, but here's the other thing that like I explain to people all the time doing what I'm doing. And like I've talked to thousands of people in my career at this point that have made the wrong decision for whatever reason to cause a loss to the company that I'm working for. And at the end of the day, like there are plenty of people that work in the same industry for the same amount of time that I've been there, that just become like conditioned to thinking that everybody's out to get somebody. And the reality of it is that like I treat every single person like a human being. Everybody deserves respect. Everybody deserves an opportunity to have a conversation. It's not going to change the outcome. You're probably going to lose your job. You may get arrested depending on how that conversation goes. But like at the end of the day, like I'm raising my son to understand people deserve respect. I'm raising my son to understand to give respect and get respect and have empathy and consider other people's opinions and understand that your opinion may be completely different. At the end of the day, I may think you're a complete fucking idiot in a conversation. I don't always need to tell you that, right? I don't always need to be louder than you. I can be completely okay just walking away and going and looking at Trish and saying, man, that guy was a fucking idiot, huh? We have to stop thinking that you are entitled to say whatever the fuck you want when you want to say it. Just because something comes across your brain as a thought that you think you need to get out because you need to make somebody, understand what your opinion is. Sometimes it's not appropriate. Sometimes it doesn't matter. And sometimes you got to understand when to pick your battle. Like you're not going to change somebody's opinion because you yell louder or you use fancy words or you keep saying the same thing over and over again without facts. Like at the end of the day, like I am raising my son and I'm surrounding him with people that do the same thing. Like I can't be worried about people that aren't putting a gender on the birth certificate because they haven't had a choice to choose that yet. I can't be worried about people that are raising their kids to be vegans or vegetarians. I can't be worried about what religion people are or aren't raising their kids. Like I'm going to raise my kid to have a moral compass, a moral center, and understand respect, and hope that other people are doing the same because they're seeing what's going on now. And if I focus on that and somebody else focuses on that separately, eventually what I hope happens is we get back to a point like our generation right now, or my generation, I guess, is like in that point where they're having kids, raising kids or whatever. And we didn't grow up with everything. Like, my dad raised 5 kids and he worked for a public school district for 33 years. Like we didn't have all that stuff. So like we worked for everything that we had. And so Joey's going to see all that. And I want to surround myself with people that do the same thing. But it's got to start somewhere. I can't, walk into this like parenting thing, like defeated. I have to think that I can make a difference. And that's the way that I choose to go about it. And I hope I'm right that it starts with one, but if history shows anything, I don't know.
Well, no, I think that that's exactly where we're at. And I think in me and Tommy's situation is a little different because we're just alone. Like, I'm not saying that like it's a bad thing. I mean, like, it's kind of like I'm sitting on the sidelines just watching a crazy show and I'm going, oh man. But I personally feel that what I'm witnessing is the implosion of this idea. And I think that if I was to have a family or whatever, I think your best bet is to just focus on you and the people around you right now, because what's going on out there, we have no control over. But I also feel, as you see, as they push the vax passports, as they push this transgender. You look at the Loudoun County School District thing and all. This stuff is gonna end, and it's gonna be defeated. It's actually gonna go away, and the other idea is gonna come back stronger. The idea of family and whatever, everything that you kind of just encompassed when you were saying how you'd raise your child. I think that all of that stuff, like I think that people are now focusing on how important that stuff is. And I think a lot of what we're seeing is not as big of it's not a majority group that feels that way. And like I said, when the Democrats or whatever you want to call anybody doing this stuff, if they just keep doubling down on these horrible ideas, and I think the shit's going to hit the fan. I just don't like the idea that it has to keep going down this road, and for how long until we break through it, and how many people are going to lose their jobs or, get canceled, or how much censorship is going to come into play until we get there, and like what we have to endure until we get there. But I do think that this ideology, or whatever you want to call it, is not going to win. It's actually only going to cause that I guess like that populist movement or whatever to be stronger. That's what I think.
So I think there's a couple of things. Like, we just keep swinging this pendulum from one side to the other. Like, there was a point in time where like you were going left of center, you were going right of center, but we're just swinging from pole to pole at this point. And like, if we can start inching back towards that center, it doesn't matter what side it's on, but like, it means that people are listening. I think the fact that you see pop culture now starting to push back on some of this because they're coming to get to them, like, I think that's going to help. And at the end of the day, I only control what's around me. Right. And I can only control, I spent a lot of time in my life blaming other people for decisions that I made or whatever the case may be. But the only time anything ever happened to me that was positive is when I was focused on me and the people that I surrounded myself with, or the people that I, were in my life, and the things that I was doing. And, what I'm focused on right now is just having as much of an impact as I possibly can. And like, having these conversations. I don't give a shit what political party you're in. I don't care who you like or what you identify as, but like, just be a good person. And like it doesn't have to be an agenda. We don't have to assign, a value to somebody or something, or we don't have to assign we stop putting people in buckets and just be a good person and listen. Like, that's really what this all boils down to. We can all listen. Like, we still may walk out of that like either confused or not really understanding or not agreeing, but that's okay. Like, just listen. You don't always have to be right. You don't always have to talk or have an opinion. Just listen and, think. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think everything that you said was like beautifully stated. I couldn't agree more with how you are raising your child and the approach that you're taking. I'm just, for me, over the past, since this pandemic, actually even prior to the election, prior to Trump being elected, my faith in the system was kind of, voting for Trump was, for me, was based off of the fact that I felt that Bernie was being screwed over from the Democratic Party. So I'm like, fuck it. Like, I'm not voting for Hillary Clinton. Fuck it. Now I'm voting for Trump. Let him be the bull in the china shop and just fucking tear shit up. Fuck it. And then as I kind of like started to look a little bit more into his policies and started to look, not even from a political policy standpoint, from the messages that we were sending from the Republican Party and the Democrat, just from a moral standpoint, like how to live your life, how to be, be positive, be the victor or the victim. You know what I mean? Like just that perspective kind of changed everything, the way I looked at how I aligned myself politically. And I could still even change with some things when it comes to politics. On both sides, there's certain things that I can kind of agree with, you know what I mean? But it's just the main thing for me is the message. The majority of the messages that are coming out of the social media, the mainstream media, leftists, Democrats, just all this propaganda from Hollywood and all, that has really kind of like awakened something in me where I'm just like, it's all doom and gloom for me anymore. It's like, it's just end game, bro. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's kind of like, in the Avengers in Endgame where, what's his fucking name? The time that had the time stone. No, not Thanos. The Avenger that had the time stone. What was his name?
Doctor Strange.
Doctor Strange. And he was kind of like, there's like one chance in like 100 billionth percent, whatever it fucking was, of like something that's actually going to go good. Like that's kind of like the way I'm looking at things. And it's unfortunate. And like I don't like being that way, especially from the fact that my mentality has changed. Like I don't want to blame people for, like, I kind of used to blame some people for things and mistakes that I made in my life. I used to blame rich people. Why can they have this? Why don't I have that? Well, it's not fair that Jeff Bezos can fucking shoot a rocket into space and I can't fucking afford a smart toilet. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like I used to be that guy and I'm not anymore. But everything that I see that's going on in this country is just looking very bleak. And I think it boils down to just drifting further away from God and in values, traditional values, and just, I think it's kind of like what Rogan mentioned on his last podcast with Douglas Murray, mentioned that as society progresses and they just bend all the rules with sex and gender and there's no laws and there's whatever, it's decline of civilization. There's no going back. Something tragic has to happen. Like think about after 9/11, how much unity there was between people. That was a time, it was a horrible thing that happened, but there was a strong sense of pride after 9/11 to be an American. And I mean, there was other countries that were flying American flags and there was such beauty in it. You know what I mean? Like there was people walking down New York City, white, gay, black, straight, whatever, and they just had appreciation for one another. You know what I mean? And I just think it's going to take something bigger than that to happen for us to get back to a place where maybe we can kind of get back on track.
So look, this is weird for me because like I'm in a weird spot. I graduated from Upper Darby High School. I graduated with 750 kids from 82 different countries, largest high school in Pennsylvania. And like, we didn't talk about like the color of people's skin. We didn't talk about their religion. We didn't talk about, what their sexual orientation was growing up. And like, yeah, there were differences. Like, right. There were differences, there were accents, there were some people that spoke English and some that didn't, a lot that didn't. But that was never something that like we talked about. And now like everybody's got to fit into something, right? So like I'm in my late 30s, I'm a white male. Like, no, like I'm in my late 30s, I'm a dad, I'm a patriot. Like I don't like identify as a white male. And now my kid's biracial, right? So like he gets an extra checkbox or something like that because now we put people in these boxes. Like it's hard because that doesn't make you who you are. Like your character, what makes you who you are. The way that you conduct yourself, the way that you treat people, that's what makes you who you are. Me being a straight white male has got nothing to do with who I am as a person. Who I am as a person is how I treat you or how we have a conversation or how we interact. And that's the problem that we have right now, is that we think because you're in one of these groups that you have to be something else, or it makes you automatically something. And, you know, like, we need to get back to a place where there's certain things that you just don't talk about, right? Like at the dinner table, you don't talk about politics, you don't talk about religion, and you don't talk about, you know, how much money that you make at work. Those three things were off the table, and now it's the topic of conversation everywhere you go.
Right.
You know, and it gets back to that whole morals thing, man. Like in the values, like traditional values, like certain things are just off limits. Like, no, we're not going to talk about that, and no, you're not going to force me to. It's okay.
Well, when you said like, you know, you worry about you and you raise your son the way you raise your son and everything, and you don't want to blame other people for your problems or whatever. But the one thing I'll say that's definitely different for me in this whole thing is I agree with you. I went to West Catholic, which was I want to say a majority black school, whatever. But when I was there, like I mean, look, I understood that there was more black kids and there was more foreigners or whatever. I mean, maybe not so much as the diversity you had at your school, but I definitely was in a minority group in a sense. But it didn't matter, and nobody ever, like, yeah, I mean, we'd address it in certain ways or whatever, but I even feel like the way I went through that school made me carry myself a certain way where no one ever, like when you said, you know, putting people in boxes, I never ever saw myself as a white male in the way that people talk about what it means to be a white male, I guess. And now all of a sudden, that's how I feel. You know what I mean? Like now all of a sudden, I'm going out into the world and I'm being seen in that checkbox. Or, you know, when you said don't talk politics or whatever, like, yeah, that was always a thing. I've been a bartender for years. You don't talk politics, you know, whatever. But what's going on in the world is it seems everybody can talk politics until you refute their politics, you know? So the amount of conversations that I do not even go near in a day, but living in a very liberal city, I guess, it's like people are always talking their politics. It's when you disagree with them that you're no longer allowed to talk politics, you know? And so my thing that I can't stand is I feel that a lot of this shit has found a way to affect a guy who never, ever put himself in a box or engaged or just always knew that if you just treat people like human beings, you'll get a human response. And there's just something going on in the world right now where, you know, you're being perceived as the white male, no matter how much of a human being you try to be, which it kind of can be stressful, you know?
Danny left West Catholic like Steve Martin in The Jerk, like, what? I'm not black. That's it. I was laughing the whole time when you were like, I don't identify as a white male. I was thinking of fucking.
No, well, what I mean is I don't.
No, I know it. I know exactly what you mean.
I don't walk around like white male. That's me. And even to the point where to be honest with you, when people, I mean, I remember walking out of the bar not too long ago, somebody with me, we were having some type of political conversation about, like, you know, and I never was going against anything they were saying. And they were talking about all this white privilege crap and all. And we walked outside, there was a bunch of frat people, and they, you know, there was a certain way they were acting where I would categorize it as that kind of white privilege attitude. So this person pointed it out to me, like as a got you kind of thing. And I looked at him and I said, you realize that I see the same thing you see. Like, I'm not looking at them like, yeah, that's my guys. Like, that's, you know what I mean?
No, I had the same moment. I just worked a catering job over the weekend. And one of the girls I worked with on the way home, like, I was a little bit drunk, you know, and I'm getting a ride home and we're in the back seat. And it turns out we had a mutual friend. And this fucking light's brutal. Like all throughout, whoever watches this YouTube, 1 minute I look like fucking Justin Timberlake. The next I look like Steve Buscemi. But we're having a conversation in the back seat about this mutual friend and whatnot. And then she was like, oh, you know, because she was calling me her work boo or whatever. And she's like, but I listen. She's like, but I listened to your podcast and like the first 2 episodes were really cool. You're talking about eating butt and blah, 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 blah. But then you got real political and you're a Trump guy. And I was like, yeah. And she goes, so we would never work. And I was like, and I don't, she's not white. Like I am actually not sure what nationality she is. She might be like, I don't know, Puerto Rican, possibly. Not really sure. And I was like, that's fucked up. And she's like, you're fucking anti-vaxxer, mama. And I said, that's fucked up. Like, and I was like, I'm so much more than that. And then like 10 minutes later, she was like, I'm so cold. And she's all cuddled up next to me.
You'll take that Trump thing now, won't you?
But I'm like, it's kind of aggravating because I'm like, bro, like, yes, I voted a certain way. Yes, I have opinions on certain things that are going on in the world right now, but I'm so much more than that. Now, if you listen to the mainstream narrative and you want to just throw me in that box, all right, I get it. You know what I mean? Because I'm the fucking, you know, people that look like me and view things the way I do are the fucking scum of the earth right now in the mainstream narrative. But the reality is, I'm a pretty swell guy. Well, I have a pretty bleak outlook of what's going on in the world right now. I'm a little bit fucking depressed about everything I fucking see, but on a good day, I'm a pretty nice guy.
Well, my buddy was going through a pretty big time because he really fell in love with this girl and she was a huge liberal. And he's like a gun-toting, you know, meat-eating, whatever. And he would come home and tell me these things that, like, you know, these conversations they had, and like she would say to him stuff like, you know, no, I don't know, like normally I wouldn't even talk to you. Like they met through work, so they're kind of forced into a situation where they talk and they get to know each other. But at every moment along the way, at everything as they progressed, every new thing she would like learn about him, she would say like, oh my God, like I would never talk to you if I knew that. And then he would tell me like how they got into a conversation about how he would explain to her about like how he, you know, why he owns a gun and and like why he hunts and, you know, what they do when they hunt. And she would say like, oh, well, that's pretty interesting. I wouldn't know that. And that made me start to feel that like, this is kind of what I mean about things being purposefully done. They're creating these things so that if they weren't ever forced into a situation where they were close to each other, and she was to somehow either see his profile or however it works and find out like he owns a gun, he voted for Trump, he's a hunter, you know, whatever. She just would not talk to him because that's kind of where we're being put in these boxes. And I feel that if you watched how their communication progressed, and it caused her to have a different understanding than what she was being told, maybe that's why they don't want people talking to each other. You know what I mean? Like they just want you to stay in your box. Like anybody who hunts is a piece of shit, or anybody who owns a gun or whatever, or has 4 guns is this. And it's keeping people away. But yet, if they actually were to engage with each other, they would realize that like both people aren't so bad. And that's the part that I think is actually being purposely done. Like they want us to have these trigger things where we don't go near each other. Therefore, we don't engage with each other. Therefore, we don't learn from each other and maybe start to understand each other and be more open-minded to each other. They want us against each other.
Yeah, so it's weird because like when I first started dating Trish before we got married, like I forget what happened. I was in a conversation and I was talking to somebody, and then I got into another conversation, and like the tone of my voice changed and how I was speaking changed because like who I was speaking to was different or whatever. Like, and I didn't do it on purpose. It just kind of happened that way because you float in and out of these conversations. And when you're used to just being around all these other people, you kind of just pick it up and you move in and out of these conversations. And when that conversation was over, she just looked at me and she goes, "What the hell was that?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" And she was like, "Well, like why, like what just happened?" And I was like, "I don't know. I finished the conversation." And it wasn't like disrespectful. It's like, I didn't even realize it's something I've been doing my entire life. And it's like, it's helped me up until this point because I can sit down and I can have a conversation with somebody with a completely different background than mine because I can relate. And like Trish and I politically don't align on a lot of things. In fact, like most election cycles, we just don't have conversations about it because, but we're aligned on issues that affect both of us equally, right? Like there are certain things that that are going on that we were raised a certain way and don't make sense, and but like politically, like we're opposite, and so that we make a choice to not have conversations about that stuff in most cases because it's not going to change either one of our opinions, right?
Right.
Um, and the reality of it is that sometimes you have to be okay with it, just like it's not going to accomplish anything. And it doesn't mean that you don't have the conversation. It just means that sometimes you got to understand when that conversation is not going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
And the way that I feel about, I'm a constitutionalist, right? If it's in the Constitution, if it's a right that we have as an American citizen, fair game. You want to change that? There's a process for that. We haven't had an amendment since 1960. Change it ratify an amendment to change the Constitution. Outside of that, like just be a good person. And this is what it all boils down to. And like Tommy, you bring it up like every third podcast, like the inalienable rights that we have as American citizens, right? Like, and I smile every time that you talk about it because what that boils down to is everything that we're talking about right now. Like, stop putting people in boxes, stop trying to identify as something, and just be a good person. Just recognize that we're all different. We all have different experiences. We're all gonna have different opinions based on whatever experience. But like at the end of the day, it's really, really simple. Just
it is.
Be a good person.
It's so simple. And I think that unfortunately, like I feel like you even talking about your high school experience, Bender talking about his high school experience, even mine, you know what I mean? Like growing up in the neighborhoods that we grew up in, the things that we dealt with, like we didn't, it was diverse, and we didn't talk about our differences. We didn't talk about being oppressed or the oppressor. You know what I mean? We talked about the new Wu-Tang album, or the new whatever movie came out, or the Eagles, or Kansas City, Baltimore. Like you found common ground, and you talked about things that just unite us all. You know what I mean? And it was so simple. Conversation and just interacting with people are so simple. But these boxes that politicians utilize purposely to get us to vote and strictly vote certain ways, everything has gotten so crazy, and it is Trump's fault. Not that Trump was bad, but because of Trump, he completely just shocked the fuck out of the political system, where they were like scrambling with like chickens with their heads fucking cut off. Like, we can never let this fucking happen again. We cannot have somebody that is not part of our fucking clique come in and just wreck shop.
So I want you to consider this, Tommy, right? Because this is where we're at right now. So we talk a lot about, Trump or Biden or Trump or Clinton and Gore. Like, the reality of it is that the president of the United States has very little to actually do with the governing of the country, right? So
of course.
The problem isn't the president that we're electing. Like, yeah, that's the headpiece, and that's the Tom Brady, right? Like,
but see, here's the thing. That's the thing, because there's 53 men on a football team. Tom Brady, if everybody plays bad, Tom Brady's going to be the one that still has to take the heat. The head coach, the quarterback are generally the one that people look to.
100%. But the people that have far more influence is your offensive line and your team.
But you don't. The average person doesn't know their fucking name, and the average person doesn't know the
Do you know
senator.
Nancy Pelosi? Do you
No,
know?
Well, no, I do, and I think there's a couple of them. Then yes, they have big names where people know who they are, but most people don't even know the mayor of their town. You know what I mean? Like,
right? Like they hit that fucking A or that B to vote along the company line or the party line.
Oh yeah, that's what I'm saying. You just go into the booth and you vote the party line, and you don't know who the fuck you're voting for. You could be voting for a complete scumbag, but it has a R or D next to your name. You don't know what they do. You don't know what they stand for. And that's the thing. Like, I totally understand what you're saying about the president and limited powers. But that's the face of the United States. So that's where everybody, I mean, listen, most people don't even vote in their general elections. You know what I mean? But they vote for the presidential election because it gets so much hype.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And it's them that's speaking to the country. You know what I mean? That causes.
We have some really important stuff going on next week. I mean, like, I can early vote right now. I won't. I refuse to. So I'll vote on Tuesday, just like everybody else. And these elections that are coming up now actually have more of an impact on this country and the future of this country and everything that we're talking about like resetting where we're going.
Yeah.
I hope that people now are woke to that, right? We're woke to so many other things. I hope that they are woke to the problems that we have in our system, regardless of the colors that you land on or the letter next to your name. Like, there are problems up and down both party lines, and there's a way to fix that. And we have the election on Tuesday, some of the local elections, and then we're going to have, elections into next year that can really positively or negatively impact this country. And I hope people are doing as much research now on those positions than they are and we have to stop being single issue voters, right? Like, that's one of the things here that's causing these problems. Like, oh, you're pro-life or you're pro-choice. Well, if you're not pro-life, I'm not voting for you. I don't care who the other fucking guy or girl is. Like, stop being a single issue voter and understand that there are things that are beyond that issue. And that's where we are. Like, these elections that are coming up right now are more important than the president. The president's a fucking buffoon, but like, that we have the ability to affect real change with these elections that are coming up.
Well, this is something that I talked to with Danny. I think it was the last episode. And Troy, I know you. I feel like you're more of a traditionalist. So like me, I am kind of like almost leaning towards anarchist at this point. Like, I have completely lost faith in both parties, in the institutions. Like I was mentioning earlier, and I feel like a fucking jerk off because I'm forgetting this gentleman's name. And Ted Cruz was grilling this guy, one, over the Anthony Fauci and all that stuff. But then he also was grilling this gentleman that's in the Biden administration over the fact that his son-in-law owns a company that I guess maybe produces critical race theory material.
You're talking about Attorney General Merrick Garland.
Yes. And he was like, so do you not see that could be a conflict of interest, that you're trying to pass laws that would benefit your son-in-law's company for financial gain? And again, completely just not answering the question, ducking and dodging every way he can, just saying the politically correct thing. But even Ted Cruz, he's talked about censorship from, Facebook and social media and all this stuff, but nothing ever gets done. like censorship is still going on. Censorship is still happening. It seems like it's getting worse and worse every single day. They just banned the #1 fucking song in the country off of fucking YouTube. I mean, it's outrageous. And you have Republicans and you have Democrats that both spew out all these issues that their voters, that their base want to hear, and nothing ever changes. And I understand what you're saying, because I totally agree with you in that your local elections are way more important. And especially if you live in a small town, whatever I think absolutely it's more important to vote in your city, how your city is run, your borough, your township, whatever it may be. That is so much more important, because obviously that has more an effect on your life than what, federal policies are going to come out. But I'm just at a loss now, because even during that back and forth today that I saw, there's so much corruption on every single fucking level. Fauci's another one. Like, he lied to Congress. The NIH came out and said, you were funding the Wuhan lab. He lied to Congress. Nothing's going to happen. He's not going to get fired. He's still going to be the face of COVID. Did we lose Troy? He's still going to be the face of COVID. He's still going to be, to everybody fucking listens to. And it's all bullshit. It's all bullshit.
Yep, but see, I think to Troy's point, and to my point, where I think there will be good that will come out of this, is like, we all can see that it's a complete farce. Like, when you were going back to the Tom Brady analogy of things, it's like, I feel that when Trump got in there, we saw that the offensive line wasn't playing for the guy we voted in for. And I agree with everything you just said too. That's what's starting to get me sick, is if I see one more tweet, like, as some fucked up shit's happening, like, oh, they're going to do vax mask, and then some Republican pointing it out, like Kevin McCarthy, like, now they're going to do this or blah, blah. And nobody's doing shit about it. Right. Nobody's doing anything about it. And so what I do think is this is what I mean about, like, the implosion of politics that we now have to witness. Eventually, the people that are going to win elections now, if they're going to win at all, are going to be people that promise you at the very least that they're not a Mitch McConnell, they're not a Kevin McCarthy. And I personally feel like if we get if we can kind of overtake, I mean, I get like I don't even like saying that I'm Republican, but it's the only way. I mean, I'm not voting Democrat right now. You know what I mean? Right. But like if in 2022 we could sweep the and get a lot of people in Congress and get people in these mayors and governors seats that are like these regular people, you see a lot of these vets and these kind of like in businessmen, or not businessmen, but you're kind of seeing this. I don't want to say Trump, whatever, but that's what it is right now. It's these people with that Trump mentality, but the Trump mentality to me isn't that they're Trump. It's we're going to hold Mitch McConnell accountable. We're going to demand, like, it's kind of like our own progressive movement inside the Republican Party.
They're tired of the status quo.
Yeah. And so like, what I will say that I never knew, that I've clearly seen in the past 2 years, is that I really do believe that it was false. What do they call it? Like false opposition or whatever. Like, these people have just been working together. Like the fact that right now there's these crazy bills that are getting passed that need Republican signatures or votes, and they're getting them, is disgusting. It's absolutely insane what these people are voting for. And it just shows you that they're just deal makers, and that's what they've been doing.
Well, what's disgusting, Danny, is the fucking earmarks that they put on these things. Like, bills don't have anything to fucking do with what the actual bill is at this point, because they just attach all these fucking earmarks to it. And it's a bullshit way to get the work done. Like these things that are getting passed should be separate bills, right? Like you shouldn't attach all this stuff to a bill, because then at the end of the day, you're going to go back to somebody's voting record and it's going to turn into a campaign, video or attack ad or whatever the case may be, because they supported this bill. But what they didn't talk about is all of the other things that was inside that bill that was supported. But if we separated this shit out the way that it's supposed to be, then then we would be able to look at somebody's record and it would be clean.
Well, Troy, we've argued over this before, because I was at a point, several years ago, and I was like, I don't fucking vote. It's pointless. And you were like, oh, well, you don't have a right to an opinion. Now, George Carlin had a bit, and I think I may have even said this to you before, about, he was like, when he said, I don't vote. And he goes, and because when shit's all fucked up, I blame you, the voter. So that is like, I'm almost getting back to that point, because it's like, I don't feel like what I vote for and who I vote for actually matters anymore. Especially after the COVID thing, especially after seeing how much fucked up shit is going on, especially after seeing like what you were just talking about, the Build Back Better, like the New Deal. I don't know exactly what this new plan that they're talking about, but it's like 1,700 pages of absolute bullshit. And they're like, nobody fucking read that whole thing. And there's so many different elements to that bill, when the average person is completely unaware of, and even the average fucking politician is completely aware of. And then it ultimately affects my pocket, and it just gets to a point where it's like, I get both arguments. Like from my standpoint, like I want to look at it and be like, I don't even want to take part in it. You know what I mean? Like I can't contribute to it, because I feel like it's pointless. But then I also feel like, yes, like there are some issues that, like what you were saying about it, maybe you're a single issue voter. There are certain aspects, it's fucking light, that yes, they are important to me, but I've just been, like I said, over this past, year or 2 years with COVID, I'm so over politicians. Like I can't even express, like when I listen to podcasts now, like people, Joe Rogan's obviously under a lot of attack. He's turned me on to Brett Weinstein, to, I can't even think off the top of my head. So many different people, that Sam Harris, that are critical thinkers, that are outside of politics, that speak about politics, Jordan Peterson, but they're brilliant minds. They're thinkers that are thinking forward-thinking people that are not politicians. That's who I have faith in. Those voices, unfortunately, they're not the ones that are in charge of getting things done. Like, and that's what I have faith in. I have faith in people like that more so than I do anybody, even Trump, when it comes to in Washington. So
yes. Why is your whole entire fucking government lawyers? Why did they all go to law school? Like, why don't we have people that worked in trades? Why don't we have people that worked in business? Why don't we have people that actually did real shit running our government?
Right.
Why is it that you go and you get a political science degree that turns into you going to law school, and ultimately that's what's going to land you in the halls of Congress or a seat in the Senate? Like, I don't,
you could be a cute Puerto Rican bartender.
but Tom, to your point, this is what I think is so crazy. We elected Trump, and then, like you said, the minute he got in there, they went on attack. They've been doing nothing, but they're still attacking Trump. And I personally feel he's not by any means the guys that you mentioned, the Sam Harris, the Brett Weinstein. I understand that. But this is why all of what I'm seeing going on disgust me. What he is he's a guy who worked in the trade, in a sense, or whatever. He's a guy who worked in the industry, and he's not the greatest. He's not the God's gift to earth or anything. But what I'll say is this: that's what's so disgusting is what they're doing to him, in my mind, and what they do to these other guys, like even Brett Weinstein right now and stuff. But mainly what I feel Trump is a message. Like, imagine if you're some guy that you just mentioned and he's like, you know what, maybe I'd like to be president. What they're doing to Trump constant, like what they've turned him into, and what they're now showing you, how they're making him endlessly fight legal battles, one after the other. There's always something coming at him from somewhere. That is a message to anybody. Like, let's just say Elon Musk for some reason was like, I could fucking become president, do so. I don't think he is a good president. I don't know, but I'm just coming up with somebody. They now have this message sent to them from what you're seeing being done to Trump. Like, go ahead and try and join the club, because if you think you're going to come in here and shake up what we've been doing, this is what we'll do to you. And that's why this thing is kind of disheartening. Is they're literally like hanging Trump in the public square as a warning to any other rebellious individuals.
Absolutely. So if there's any other outsider that had a shot. I mean, obviously Trump had fame. He's got the fortune. So that he had all that going for him. It's so difficult for an outsider to get involved and come out of nowhere just financially alone. I mean, it's damn near impossible. The closest probably thing to it was maybe Ross Perot, right? I mean, so that's what I mean. And that's what I get, what I was ultimately trying to ask you, Troy, because I know politics is something we've talked about.
Yeah.
For years, and you were much more knowledgeable about them, for long time ago before I was, and I'm still not, but I have a little bit more ear to the ground. I'm a little bit more aware of certain things now. So what makes you at this point, and seeing everything that's going on over the past few years, what makes you still feel confident pulling that lever?
This country, man, like this flag right here, right? Was built, and it's imperfect, and the people that founded this country founded it on the values and the things that we wanted to be centered around. And where we're at right now is, if you identify as a Democrat or if you identify as a Republican, like, first of all, this country was never founded on a bifurcated system. There were like 18 different political parties when this country first started, and then ultimately, like, it morphed in the early 20th century into Republicans versus Democrats, and Republican ideals were what the Democrat ideals are today, but ultimately everybody had the country first. And I think, where we're at right now is people are being self-serving, and they're not looking for the best of the country. So, like, the thing that keeps me moving is the fact that there are people that are still fighting where we're at today. Like the Nancy Pelosi's, they have the voice, they have the power, they've been there for 40 fucking years and haven't done a goddamn thing. But the people that are on the ground that people aren't talking about, the people that are first time, congressmen or congresswomen, that are really actually listening to their constituents and trying to affect actual change, they're the people that I have faith in. And, this younger generation of politicians that are coming in because they're fucking tired of just listening to the same people over and over and over again. Like, those are the people that I have faith in. I have zero faith in Mitch McConnell. I have zero faith in Nancy Pelosi. I have zero faith in anybody that's been a career politician. This system was never founded on being a career politician. Do I ever think that people are going to sign a bill that's going to limit their term? No, not right now. But like, do we need to get there? Yeah. So like for me, here's what I'm going to tell you. In 2016, that election, in a lot of ways, for a lot of people, was a reckoning. And this past election, in a lot of ways, was a reckoning. We got 140 million Americans out to vote that, in this election cycle.
They might not have all been alive, but
look,
some,
right? So
somehow they were voting from the grave, I think, but
yeah, no, look, there's okay.
I'm just I had to throw that in there.
No, I look, I'm there, right? Like,
right.
But the reality of it is that people are paying attention because it's affecting them now.
Right.
People are paying attention because, like, politics used to be this thing that, like, it affected some people, but not really all of us, because ultimately, like, the bills that were being passed and the things that we're talking about made sense for everybody as a whole. But now what's happening is that, we've lost the sense of the greater good, or we've lost the sense that, like, all right, I gotta, sacrifice this, but ultimately it's gonna pay off in the long run. Like, everybody, and this is where we're at in society today in this country, is we have this like immediacy culture where like everything needs to happen right now. We don't take these small steps to make big changes in the future. And look, in 2016, it's the first time that I didn't vote for a Republican president. In 2016, I voted for Gary Johnson. Like, that was my way of like a protest vote, right? Like, I couldn't get behind either one or the other. Right. And I still voted, right? And there were a lot of people that were like, why the fuck are you going to vote for somebody that's never going to get elected? Well, because the reality of it is that, like, I wasn't going to put myself in a position to not vote. When I look at what happened over the 4 years that Trump was in office, what it really boils down to is that people aren't paying attention to actually what was done, the policies that were made. They're paying attention to the Twitter handle. They're paying attention to the shit that made news. They're paying attention to words and things that Donald Trump said while he was the president. Some of those things were borderline or just flat out wrong, stupid, inappropriate. Like, and nobody, even Trump supporters, nobody's going to argue that point. But the thing that Donald Trump always had in mind was this country first. And like, the things that he was fighting for were things that we've all talked about in back alleys at 3 o'clock in the morning after leaving Barnaby's, that we wanted to see change. And he tried to actually do it. The reason that I voted for George Bush twice, and I would have voted for him a third time, and I would vote for him tomorrow, is because when he told you he was going to do something, he did it. Whether or not it was the right thing to do or not, or, but like, the guy just, he had the country first. And where we've won as a nation is when we've gotten behind each other as a nation. And so that, for me, is what keeps me going and keeps me thinking that everything's going to be okay eventually. Like, every country that's ever been founded goes through these phases where, like, we have to figure some shit out. And we're in a phase right now where we have to figure some shit out. And honestly, like, we're the victims of our own success. There has never been a country in this world that has ever been as successful as the United States of America. And there's never been anybody that's been this free for this long without disruption. And we're in this phase now where, like, people are just so accustomed to winning that they don't know how to not win. And like, they're so used to being right because they're told everything is okay, and that, that everything that they do is okay. And everybody's afraid to just say, like, nah, bro, you're wrong. And somebody to actually accept that. At the end of every single year, I take time to like reflect on like not the shit that I did well. I take time to reflect on the shit that didn't go well or didn't go the way that I planned it to. And like we need to get back to doing that as a country. Like look at it like, okay, this is where we went wrong. We're in a bad spot right now. And it's hard to see the forest through the trees, but like what keeps me going is knowing that it's taken time for us to get here and we're still young as a country. We're still learning and we need to learn together. Like, I can't imagine a place that I would ever want to live. I've been to the Philippines. I've been to Hong Kong. I've been to Italy. Like, they're not the same, man. Like, there's these restrictions in these places on citizens that just doesn't make any sense. And like, as fucked up as things are for us right now, we're still better than 99.9% of the world. And we as Americans need to get behind each other and commit ourselves to doing things that are best for the country. Like, we need to stop being selfish about it.
I completely agree with you. My thing is, how does the government do that? How does the government bring us together? Because I think
The government's responsibility.
yes, but in many ways, like okay, so I think we could probably agree that over the past maybe since Obama, right? Or I can't really, I mean, I was still a little bit young during the Bush era and not really paying attention. I was spending more nights at the bar than I was but over the past several years, there's been more and more and more government overreach.
Mhm.
Right? So they are just in every fucking aspect of our fucking lives at this point, pretty much. I mean, I don't know that we can dial that back. Every little inch that we give them, they're not going to give it back. So even though everything you're saying is right, and I agree with you, but every single day there's a new freedom that's kind of stripped away. And it's something that I heard about, somebody was just mentioning. There's subtle things. It's not a big, we're not getting the Johnny Holmes cocks shoved up their ass. You know what I mean? It's a slight little fucking rubbing around the rim, a little tickle, on your tummy, whatever. It's just subtle little things each year that come down the pike. And we just kind of take it because they're usually subtle things that you don't notice. You maybe a couple hours more out of your taxes, maybe a little censorship on YouTube, maybe whatever, just all these subtle little things that just keep adding and building and building. This country was not founded on that, but it keeps going in that direction.
Yeah, but here's what I think where we're at, man. This is what I'm saying. Like, I think people are paying attention now. Like, I think that they're
paying attention because everywhere we turn, the government is telling us certain things, especially after the pandemic. I mean, the past 2 years is absolutely insanity. But I think people are paying attention more now because of they're dependent so much on the government now. You don't really have a choice. And because that's not what this country was founded on, and that's the direction we're going. And even just in any system, even like the education system, right? You probably, as a new teacher, like you were talking about new politicians that are starting out, that are going into Washington, you have faith in them. A new teacher, it's your passion. You want to go teach and, have influence over young kids. Once you get, what is it? How long does it take to get tenured? 5 years?
Depends on the district, but
yeah, roughly we'll say just
it probably averages out at about 5 years.
And it's probably the same for politicians, right? Once they get 5 years, then they get the benefits for life and all that stuff. Is it
one term, man? All you got to do is get elected.
That's it.
That's it.
I thought there was a like a 5-year period or something like that. But again, so once you reach that threshold, you're kind of entrenched in this system, and there's like a sense of like, okay, what do I have to fight for and do now? So you know what I mean? And a lot of people, not everybody, but a lot of people get comfortable in that position because they've made it now. They don't really have to put that extra effort in. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I
and
think,
like that's where, so like I think that the people that started as career politicians didn't start going in thinking, you know what, I'm going to do this for the next 40 years. I think to your point, they were young and they were like, you know what, I'm going to make a fucking difference in this country. I'm going to fucking make positive change. I'm going to do it for my people. And then all of a sudden they were like, they got this little taste, right? Just the tip. You know, they got this little taste that like, oh man, I can actually like control you.
right.
So I'm going to take this. And then like it turns into a little bit more. But now I think we're at a point, Tommy, where people are paying attention because they saw or enough things got brought to the surface that they're like, wait a minute. I gave up a little too much here. I took this a little too deep and I don't know where this is going. Like, I think there are more people that are paying attention to where we're going. And, you know, honestly, like there are enough people in this country that immigrated here and went through the ridiculous process that it is to get US citizenship, that know what their home country is like and know what the difference is here, that are going to help us to turn that around. Like if you think about how this country was founded and the people that came here that founded this country, they weren't native to here. They were tired of being ruled by a monarchy that was telling them what they could or couldn't do. And they were like, you know what, we'll just build our own shit and we'll do it better and we'll do it the way that we want to do it.
Right.
And that's where I think we are right now. It's going to be slow, man. Like this isn't going to happen in 4 years. This isn't going to happen in 8 years. Where we're at right now started with Reagan. Where we're at right now, actually, if you really want to talk about it, like JFK was the last time this country was actually united around being American. It's been this like slow burn that has accelerated since, you know, the mid 90s. But we can get that back. We just have to commit ourselves and get behind the fact that like we got to put we before me, and we got to understand that, you know, what's better for this country ultimately is going to be better for all of us in the long term. And like, you know, stop talking about your party affiliation, stop, you know, and just listen, man. Like that's ultimately like what it boils down to. I think we are, as terrible of a president as Joe Biden is, I think this is the next step in the reckoning, right? Because now people aren't looking at Republicans are terrible or Democrats are terrible. I think now people are like, oh shit, we got to focus on people. And I think that's where we are, right? We used to elect people because we're like, you know what? They're a good person. And, you know, there were people that would cross party lines. You know, they didn't just go into the booth and hit the ticket for their party. And it was because they could relate to that person, or they thought that person had everybody's best interest in mind. And like everybody's willing, regardless of what side of the aisle that you stand on, to make sacrifices for the greater good, because we understand what it took to get here, how fast that can go away, and what the impact that would have on all of us would be. But I think the reckoning's here, and like, yeah, it's going to be a slow walk back to where we want to be. It's not going to happen overnight, but I think that people are paying attention.
I think in 8 years, those shipping containers that are off the coast of fucking California are going to be set up for camps, and you're going to be fed bugs, and you're going to be like, that's it. That's what life is now. Fake meat and centipedes.
Yeah.
No, but first off, I 100% agree with you, bro. Like that's what I think. I think that all of this stuff is only more beneficial to wake everybody up. Even this presidency and whatever else, it's all a necessary means to an end. But I just hate the fact that, like you said, I feel like we put ourselves here,
Mhm.
and it's definitely gonna. It's like we are gonna have to endure a lot of BS to get to that place that eventually I'm very confident we're going to get to. It just really sucks that, like, like it's all self-inflicted wounds, I feel,
Mhm.
I'm very conflicted because everything that Troy said, I completely agree with. Everything this country was founded on, I completely agree with. The Constitution, all that stuff. I just see a tyrannical, overreaching fucking government that keeps growing and growing and growing. And I don't see it going back to I understand some aspects of government are necessary. You know what I mean? Like, especially locally. But the federal government and the overreach with mandates and whatever, I have an issue with, and I just don't see I don't see freedom anymore, really. I mean, yes, I get it. Maybe that sounds very ignorant on my part because I haven't traveled to other countries to fully understand that. I should say I don't see the freedom that this country was founded upon anymore. I don't see that same freedom, and I don't see it. I don't see it moving forward. I don't feel optimistic moving forward about that.
Well,
I think there could be somebody. There could be somebody that's extremely charismatic, another fucking great talker, another Obama, whether she could be Republican, Democrat, extremely charismatic person. I do see that happening again. I do see, especially the bar is going to be really low after Biden. Anybody that can complete a fucking sentence now, people are going to be like, that's the guy. That's our fucking guy.
No, but you know what, Tom, to your point, it's like this, because I see what you're saying. Like, how do we go back? Like, all right, if we already if the government is what it is right now, how do things go back?
Because there was a simple tweet by Zuby, he's a rapper. I don't know. You know who that is, Troy?
Nah.
He's a political commentator, like social commentator. And it was so simple tweet. Everything could be solved right now if they just left us alone. And I completely agree. If the government just stepped the fuck back, laid out some lists and said, hey, look, here's the deal with COVID. Here's the deal with jobs. We're going to work on it. We're not going to force you to do anything. We're not going to call you a fucking racist anymore. We're not going to call you a domestic terrorist. We're not going to call you a fucking pronoun. You're just a fucking an American. Be an adult. Go to work. Raise some good kids. And just be a good person. Like, don't kill fucking people. You know what I mean? You could say some shitty things in emails, like John fucking Gruden. And maybe you won't lose your fucking job because look, some people say fucked up things. Grow some tough fucking skin. But I don't see that happening. I don't see a government that's just gonna come out and be like, listen, we're gonna protect you against China. You know what I mean? We're gonna try and build our economy. We're gonna maybe bring some fucking jobs back from other countries. We're gonna be self-reliant on our own. I don't see that happening.
But I think the thing that we're also not seeing, because we haven't seen it in a while, is that right now during this pandemic, it seems like as if what we want doesn't matter. I've even said that to you a few times on this pod where I say what I don't like that I'm seeing in government is like the polls, like a poll will come out that say like 75% of people don't agree with vax passports, and they still do it. And so at some point, the people are going to, whether it be by getting certain people elected, something, like at the end of the day, we do have the power in this country if we collectively are united. So
we could.
But so what I'm trying to say is, if right now, like Troy said, everybody's paying attention. Well, we're also paying attention to this crazy, ridiculous lizard on a treadmill spending. We're also paying attention to that the government has too much overreach and whatever. Now, I don't know if that this will happen, but I guess just to kind of, because I see Tommy in his doom and gloom here, and I agree with him. But I guess if I had to say how it could go back would be, I mean, there's many, I don't know the ins and outs of how, but if certain people were to get in office and they were to get there because they actually care and people voted them in because we wanted certain things to change, hopefully that they could strip away. Like a lot of the shit we're dealing with right now is executive orders and whatever else. And so I just imagine I don't know exactly the process, but maybe somebody will go in and with the thought of we're going to maybe that'll become a talking point for your campaign. Like, I promise I'm going to strip down a lot of this government overreach or whatever. Something's going to happen, but I don't think, I think that the battle we're in is, yes, there's a lot of government overreach right now. And I feel like there's a race to stop it before it's too late. So I do agree with you there. Like, at what level do we give it away to the point where we can't get it back? But I don't think we're there yet. And we are still under this pandemic bullshit, so it feels that way.
Yeah, I think I really like DeSantis. I think I just saw something today that the Florida's has like the lowest rates of COVID rates in the country. And if you turn on CNN, it's the complete fucking opposite. Like, everybody's fucking dying over there. You know what I mean? So like, I like DeSantis. He's like a junior Trump. He's much more polished. I like what he has to say. I think he has the balls to say it. My problem is that he's still in a system that I think is just too corrupted. That once he gets into office, there's just going to be, there's a bunch of hoops that you got to jump through. There's a bunch of backdoor deals that you're going to have to kind of go along with in order to maybe get something passed that you think is the greater idea. Like, Troy, you've been listening to the podcast for a little bit. We're called layman's terms for a reason. Some of the analogies we use, they're very simple. I told the story about being in theater, going through the casting process, and
Harvey Weinstein in it.
Yeah, and me, I'm like, listen, like I'm gonna cast talent, which should be, obviously, in any situation you want the best person for the job, right? But then during the meetings, there's all these little factors that come into place. Well, this person's a member. This person's, been involved with the theater for so long. This person's kind of hard to deal with. So you have all these other factors that come into play. And all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute. I just came here to put together the best team, the best cast that I could put up on stage to perform. And that's it. Now there's all these other factors that I didn't even think of that come into play. And I think, even though I think DeSantis is already fully aware of that because he's already in politics, I think it's amplified once you become the president. And I just think there's too much, like the deep state and everything that people talk about. I just think there's too many people behind the scenes, too many influencers, too many big bank accounts that just have too much influence over this whole system. And that's where I just am. That's where the doom and gloom comes from. I don't think.
Yeah. So here's where I'm at. Like, and I like the way that DeSantis governs his state. I think that Florida is well governed. They have some fucked up people that live down there that do some fucked up funny shit, and I like reading the articles about the Florida man. But I don't think that DeSantis is who this country needs. I think when we look at the greater good of the country, Nikki Haley, Tim Scott, those are the types of people that, you know, if you really want to look at people that aren't going to be divisive, that have the ability to step up and stand up in front of people. I mean, for Christ's sake, Nikki Haley was the governor of South Carolina when Dylan Roof walked into a church and killed people because they were black, and, you know, immediately stepped up and united her state around, like, no, this isn't what we're going to stand for. And then she went to the United Nations and stood up in front of the entire world and told them, like, no, we're not going to be your piggy bank. We're not going to be your bank account anymore. And she did it in a way that wasn't seen as being elitist, right? I think the problem with DeSantis, and I like what he's doing down there. I like the stance that he's taking. I agree with him 100% in terms of, you know, let cities govern themselves, but don't put people in a place where they're going to, you know, be for or against each other. But I think he's doing it in such a way that is, you know, causing a divide between people nationally, that I think is really hard to not ignore, right? And this is why, as much as I really respect and like Donald Trump from a policy standpoint and what he did for this country from a straight policy standpoint, I don't think he's the right choice for 2024.
Well, I agree with you on that from a perspective of, from the unity perspective.
Yeah.
I understand that, because I'm conflicted. If he does decide to run again, I will be conflicted with that. I appreciate his honesty. I appreciate his policies, but his presentation, his approach, his ability to kind of rally people, that does scare me, because what we're seeing now from Trump supporters about Biden, and I mean, Biden's digging his own fucking grave, but what I'm saying is there is so much divide, you know, with Biden. You're going to get that with Trump again. So that is my concern. But then there's also the part of me that just wants to say, fuck it, because I think it's all bullshit anyway. And if the policies, and it's going to put a couple extra dollars in my fucking my bank account, my 401k is going to do better. Yes. You know what I mean?
So that's the shit we got to get away from, dude. Right? Like, so if we're going to, like, what you asked me about, like, how do we get there? Like, how do you, like, I'm not thinking about this from my bank account. Donald Trump would be the best thing that ever fucking happened to my 401k. You know, from a regulation standpoint, from you know, an economic growth standpoint, would be the best thing that ever happened for me and my son's 529. But at the end of the day, it's not the best thing. It's not what this country needs to move forward into the future. And, you know, as much as, you know, we have to recognize that there is a generation of people right now that were raised on participation trophies, and that they weren't ever told that they were bad at anything, and they're terrible at a lot of things. We need somebody to recognize that and normalize that and figure that out and bring people together from very diverse backgrounds. And, like, I don't know that Ron DeSantis or Ted Cruz or Donald Trump is that person that's going to do that. We saw what happened to Tulsi Gabbard, and I think that she could have been somebody that would have done that for this country. You know, so these are not popular folks that we're talking about here, but it's going to take somebody stepping up and saying, you know what, like, that's the guy, that's the girl that's going to do it. Like, Tulsi was the best presidential candidate that we've had in the last 20 years, full stop. I
kind of agree, but that's what's fucked up about the system, is you actually had a pretty reasonable, like, articulate person of God. She checked all of the boxes that in particular the Democrats were wanting, and yet they called her a fucking Russian spy.
That's what they do.
Like,
that's
and,
the go-to.
And she's too nice to play that game.
So Troy, let me ask you this: who? Let's just say, I mean, fucking Biden can't even run for re-election. There's no, I don't know how much he's fucking dying or whatever, but like, what, you know what I mean? Like, forget the dementia part, whatever. Either way, he can't, like, let's just say he's fucking he's still the same guy he is today. If there's no way he runs for re-election. So who then runs for the Democrats? And the reason why I then say this is I agree with everything you guys said about Trump, whatever, where, like, for me, I wish he would have got reelected. I have my fucking qualms about what actually happened to him. However, you know, now we're going to be looking at an 80-year-old man now, like another, you know, your 4 years can do a lot to somebody, even if you just look at what like Biden was 4 years ago. But what I'm really horrified of is Trump's probably going to run. So these people that you're talking about, like say a Nikki Haley, possibly even though you said you don't like DeSantis, I agree. There's things I don't like about, like, you know, I'm not Republican. I don't fucking like Trump was just a thing and he was the only one that could do what he did. And I think he did a lot of things that I liked, but I didn't really see like the next move after Trump, like what's after Trump. And so what I'm horrified of is that the Democrats like run with Kamala or something. And then could you imagine the primaries if like DeSantis wants to be president and Mike Pence wants to be president and Nikki and so imagine, let's just say even Pence and Trump like going at it in a primary. These people can like if Pence starts to say shit that he knew of Trump, like if they're attacking each other like that, it will just destroy any movement from the right. And then we'll end up just left with Kamala.
No, I don't. So I don't think that the Democrats are dumb enough to run Kamala. I mean, have you seen the polls on her?
Yeah, that's
terrible.
But
Yeah.
but they picked her, like, you know what I mean? I'm not saying that I'm with you. That's what my question is, what happens? Can Kamala and Biden just not be part of the next election?
Yeah, I don't think they're going to be. I don't think either one of them are going to be. So
But do you see my fear then of like, let's just like, even if DeSantis, like, let's just say you like DeSantis, I'm just using him, or Nikki Haley, you know what I mean?
yeah.
Nikki Haley and Trump could destroy each other in a primary enough that nobody wants to fucking vote for anybody. And then you're left with whatever option you got from the Democrats.
Yeah, so here's what, if Trump cares about this country, he'll walk away from the 2024 election because all he's going to do is get in the way. There's a contingent of people that it doesn't fucking matter who's on that ticket. It doesn't matter what's best for this country. I think Trump will run as an independent, and all that's going to do is take vote, which, like, to a certain degree is like kind of what I was saying earlier, that we need to get away from this bifurcated system, and having an independent get that much of a vote would actually, you know, do some good. But it's also like beneficial for where we're at right now. So part of the problem that we have is the government overreach and the agenda of the left right now. Somebody running as an independent is going to, you know, basically make it easy for them to walk into the White House.
Matthew McConaughey. Matthew McConaughey is going to run independent.
There you go. Yeah. All right.
All right.
But yo, Tom, remember when I said,
shit?
remember when I said the other day, I said, I don't think Trump wants to run for president. What I meant by, dude, and I'm dead serious. Like the past week, as somebody who follows him and is usually more on his side when he says certain things, after he got with this fucking this media company, and I think that's what he's going to do big time, is like really become a fucking he's going to buy some networks or something, because he just raised a shit ton of money to do so. But he also had like 3 statements that he put out that were just horrible back to back. The last one, he called the people in the View slobs, and I'm with him. Don't get me wrong, but even for me, it was like, oh, you don't want to fucking be president. And I really think that, like, you're right. I don't think he's going to run now in 2024. But I think what he might do is not run as an independent, but I think he likes the idea of throwing his endorsements out and getting people. And I think he's going to try and be, to a certain extent, like an Obama for the Republican Party, where he just puts his name on somebody and they whatever, and he remains this hero of the Republican Party, but he doesn't have to go through all the bullshit again. And his thing now is to focus on the media, which is his number one enemy.
Troy, I think you're on to something about a third party, because it's something I actually mentioned before. If there was a legit contender to come in as a third party, I would be all about it. Like even somebody, if Tulsi Gabbard decided to run as an independent, I would be very, very interested to see. The problem is financially, how does she handle that?
Yeah, and so that's the tough part, right? So like, if you like, do you know who Joe Jorgensen is?
Yes.
Right. So
I mean, I've heard of his name, but I don't really know.
So
he was an independent, or no, she is, right?
She
Libertarian, yeah.
So what?
I was just doing a pronoun. I don't know.
They.
So like, this is the problem, right? So Joe Jorgensen, if you read from a policy standpoint where she stands, and where, the Libertarian Party would like to take this country, I think it would align really well with like what you want to do. So, deregulate a lot of industry to drive innovation and drive costs down. Limit the government's intervention in your personal and professional lives, and ultimately like get rid of the Fed, right? So like, these systems that were put in place at a time where they needed to be put in place, coming out of the Depression and where people were coming out of the war, and they needed something to kind of get them through. The welfare system was never designed to be a welfare state, and that's where we are. And what happens is that the longer these entitlements are around, the more that people become dependent on them, and then we wind up with 10 million open jobs and people saying they can't find one. So if Trump, the only thing that could come out of Trump running in 2024 as an independent and not a Republican would be that, like, okay, this could work. And then maybe they have to start fundraising earlier than everybody else, to get the money, because the big donors are going to push the Republican and the Democrat Party. But if somebody can show that they can make a difference coming from a different party, that's a win. But to that end, my ideal Republican ticket would be Tim Scott, Nikki Haley as the vice. I think Tim Scott's going to run. You're going to definitely see him in the primary. I don't see him not running. He's, I don't think anybody's going to touch him in 2022. He's absolutely going to win re-election. And then between 2022 and 2024 is becoming the face of that party. And Nikki kind of pulled a Condi when she kind of walked away after she walked away from her appointment to the UN. And I think part of that was to kind of, recharge. So her speaking at the GOP convention this year, I think was her saying like, I'm gonna be around. Like, she's not holding office right now. She's kind of laying back. And I think that's what we need, man. Like, we need people that are gonna look out for the best of this country. And I think if people listening to this podcast have not heard Nikki Haley or Tim Scott's name, people listening to this podcast haven't listened to Tim Scott opening the GOP convention for the 2020 election, go listen to that speech. Listen to every single word that comes out of his mouth and what his message is, because it had nothing to do with being a Republican. It had everything to do with where we are as a country and what we need to do, where we need to be, where we need to go, and how we're going to get there. And Tommy, like you've asked me a couple times, like, how do I have confidence, or like, how do I like have a positive outlook of where we're going? It's shit like that.
Well, the appeal of Tim Scott for me is funny. Obviously, I don't know a lot about Tim Scott, but I do know he's a black guy, which I'll pay money to just watch the Democrats call him racist all day because he's a Republican. So like, I'll just love the visual of them trying to tell him that he's like a racist, kind of like what they just did with Larry Elder. Like, he was the black face of white supremacy in California. So like, I'll just love that whole identity politics fucking debacle. But with the other thing you were mentioning about the Libertarian Party, I would be completely open with that. But there's a couple problems with that though. Like you were just saying, we're going to have to get rid of several programs. And it goes back to kind of what you were saying earlier about we've been raised. There's a generation of people that have been told that they're good at everything, the trophy generation, and they're really bad at things. So to go up then in the Libertarian Party and kind of knock a lot of these programs that help those people, I think that'll be a disaster. I think it would be such a shock to the system that I think it would panic people to death.
So like, where we need to get to is people paying attention and doing research on things that aren't within their circle, right? So you have the ability on Facebook, you have the ability on Instagram to like pages or like people that are like-minded to you, right? And ultimately, like, that's kind of what winds up happening. Like, people, right, they wind up putting themselves in these silos where you're creating this group thought, whereas like where I am right now, and like, it's funny because you brought up that you and I have talked about politics. Like, there was a point in time where like we weren't aligned politically, and like that's where the majority of those conversations came from. Like, how the fuck like are you supporting Bernie Sanders? Like, this makes no sense. And like, why are you blaming other people? And like, here we are a couple years later, and now we're talking about like where you stand now and why.
I think what happened at that point was I was liking more puppy pictures than politicians. So the algorithm were feeding me beagles and ice cream and Jay-Z and shit like that.
Bernie's mittens.
And Bernie's, yeah, and Bernie. So, and again, I think, to be completely honest with you, when you talk about people doing research, I think you're putting too much faith in people, because I can tell you just from personal experience, I don't even research as much as I should. And I've certainly paid much more attention over the past several years than I did in previous years when I voted for Obama twice and, and was going to vote for Bernie. So I don't think that most people, I think there's absolutely a large portion of people that base their political affiliations and their voting sways their voting, who their favorite celebrities and their movies and the Hollywood, that whole machine Not even just Hollywood. I mean, it's everything. Social media, Hollywood media, that all influences you in a way that I took it as an insult years ago when I had people like, oh, dude, you're only voting for this person because Eminem's telling you to. And I'd be like, fuck you, man.
I ain't voting for anybody. Eminem tells me.
Fuck you, man. But like at the time, I was completely at the time, listen, ideology wise, like it's almost like the old saying, you know, we talked about it before. You know, if you're not a liberal in your 20s, you don't have a heart. And if you're not a conservative by the time you hit your 30s, you don't have a brain. And I think that's exactly what it was. Like, I think everything that progressives and Democrats, everything they talk about sounds fantastic. You know, it sounds, why would you not want to help people? Why would you not want to talk about racism? Why would you not want to do all these lovely things and plant flowers and save the fucking trees and blah, 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 blah. Like, all of it sounds so like, of course, like I want people to succeed. I want people to be happy. I want people to be taken care of. I want people to have free healthcare. But then when you break it all down and realize that that's not exactly how the system works. And not only is not that the way the system works, it is just impossible. Like just from the free education standpoint, if everybody goes free college tomorrow, everybody's going to get a fucking bachelor's degree. What is that bachelor's degree worth anymore?
Freedom isn't free, right? Like
and then the market's just flooded. So what separates you from every, like, there's no outcome of equality or equity, whatever the fuck they, you know.
But Tom, you said that your thing is that you don't see people like doing their own research. You don't see how there could be something good at the end of this, and then you said, you know, even when you were there, you listen to celebrities or whatever. This is my thing that's exciting me, is they are extending their hands so far. Like, first off, when you said, yeah, all the stuff that liberals talk about and everything, the progressives, it does sound so wonderful, but does it really now, or is it starting to sound weird and a little far-fetched?
Well, now, yeah.
But so my point is you got, when you said about celebrities and whatever, and I'm with you and I agree. And so through this whole debacle, we have had everyone against us. And so, but now you got Joe Rogan teaching people that maybe Fauci isn't a god. You got Dave Chappelle teaching people that, you know what, maybe we shouldn't listen to everything these people say is right or wrong about transgenders. You know, like, not about, he's exposing that it's not really about that community, that there's more going on. And the community itself doesn't have a problem. But then you have the Kyrie Irvings and these sports athletes saying, like, you know, showing. So basically, it's like they tried to polarize all of that. If you're against transgender bathrooms, you're a fucking Trump supporting piece of shit. If you don't like Fauci and you're against science, it's because you're a Trump supporter. If you're against the vax passports, you're a Trump supporter. If you want to fight at the school board, you're a dirty Trump, unvaxxed, whatever. And now what you have going on is you have parents being told in Virginia that they don't have any right to involve themselves in what their kids are being taught. And they're being labeled terrorists, and they're not all Republicans, and unvaxxed is not all Trump supporters, to the point where now you have these sports athletes going. So what I'm just trying to say is, like I said before, you don't have to win the whole entire country over, but I would say that just those 5 things alone that I just said is going to, if maybe there's people out there that don't research, but they just believe in their celebrities and everything. Well, you know, Nicki Minaj too. Like, we're at this point where you got Nicki Minaj tweeting out Tucker Carlson and saying, like, and he defended me. So don't tell me who I can and can't like. So that kind of attitude and what I think is it's this overreach by the Democratic Party that's pushing people to not necessarily like Trump, but to realize that maybe me and you and them have more in common than we're being told. and you're seeing Trump supporters and BLM now protesting together over the vax stuff. I think that stuff is great personally. And so that's where I see good happening, and then maybe something comes out of it and you see maybe the whole country won't unite over it, but if enough of us do, it'll get rid of that whole mentality of the polarization of each other.
Yeah, but I can't. First of all, the whole education system in general is dominated by the left. Hollywood is dominated by the left. Sports, all of that, social media, all of it. So although there are some that, Kyrie Irving, I don't know that I really want to say Dave Chappelle. I mean, he's certainly questioning some things and speaking out, but like I wouldn't really. I don't know that I'm ready to put him like, at the forefront of anything.
No, but I mean, he's showing you that you ain't got to do like just because you say something bad or disagree with a transgender.
Yeah, he's telling you, I'm not going to bend to your will. Like, I'm not going to bend to cancel culture. But like, I don't think there's enough voices that are coming from that aspect. Like again, the education system is
well, it's not over.
No, but the education system is the biggest factor.
Well,
because again, I was writing fucking papers about Karl Marx in college.
But dude, like, you're 100%. I had to read.
So like there, I wasn't writing about Ronald Reagan and conservatism.
Well, now you're getting into Troy's thing of you want it now. It's going to be now.
You know what I'm saying?
But no, what I'm saying to you though is like what you hear more now from the conservative side. What you're seeing with Rumble and Locals just merged and Trump doing something now and Parler, and even if some of them suck and whatever else, what's going on is we're identifying that the fight is in this classrooms. Like, you're right that the left has taken over the school system. However, we didn't really understand that. And now we're watching a left controlled school board cover up a rape in Loudoun County. And I'm not saying that that's going to change everything, but what I mean is then there are people on the left who disagree with that, but they're watching Obama call it fake outrage in a campaign for the guy who's running for governor of Virginia. So like what I'm saying is, that's not enough and whatever, but there's no more Trump in this picture really. And you're just watching the Democrats overplay their hand, and they're getting into the point where they're attacking their own and they're waking up their own people. And if you're a mother right now and you have a problem with something in the school system and you are speaking out or maybe silently agreeing with what's going on and hoping for the best outcome, and then you see things like this happen, I guess what I'm saying is it's a little piece of something that might open up people to understand that the left has too much control in our school system. And I'm not saying that that's going to be the thing that like that one incident is going to change it. But what I'm saying is people are like, where I do agree with Troy is like, people are seeing it. Shit that you would have never known. We didn't understand that. I never really understood, even if you probably, if I took a 50-50 answer, I would have probably said it's more liberal, but I wouldn't have realized that they had total control of the school system. Like there's no Republican influence in there, or at least a partisan, non-partisan or whatever influence. And so hopefully now people will start to identify and try and make sure that they can kind of even the score there somehow. Hopefully. I agree with everything you're saying, bro. We're fucked in so many ways, but I do see a light at the end of this tunnel. And unfortunately, it might, like Joy said, it's not going to be tomorrow. It could be 8 years, 10 years, 20 years, but we're not going to become this society that they're trying to create. I don't think so.
I love everything that you just said, right? Because I think it kind of ties back to what we started this conversation on. And it's like, the pop culture and the people that were on the one side pushing an agenda, like, are like, hold on a second. Like, wait a minute. Some people are just being human beings here. Like, let's focus on that, right? So like the whole Nicki Minaj turn is like really interesting to me because like regardless of what my opinion of Nicki Minaj is, but like what she's saying right now is like 100% right. Like, she's not looking at it from a party line standpoint. She's looking at it from a, hey, wait a minute, like what makes sense? And all that shows me is that, like, regardless of what the source of your information is or where you get what keeps you going, like at some point when the mob turns on you, now like your eyes get bigger. Now it's like, oh, wait a minute. And like now it's like, wait, you start to question everything, and it takes one, right? Like, so talk about what I'm doing with my son and the way I'm raising him. Tommy, one of the things you've asked me like multiple times, like, how do you do this? Like, dude, I deleted every social media app off my phone. I still have the accounts, but they're not on my phone. Like when I was laid off, man, I would fucking sit on the couch and like scroll and like you find yourself in these fucking rabbit holes that like you just start going down and you can't get out of them, and there's nothing, like you don't have shit to do. Like, so you're like, all right, I'll just, keep following this and pull this string and see where it leads. And then like ultimately, like you just get angry about shit because you start reading all this stuff, and the way they have these algorithms, like doesn't matter whether you're on a VPN or not, they figure out a way to fucking push information at you. And at the end of the day, like I took that shit out of my life because I have more important shit to do, and I want to be impactful, and I can't do that if I keep finding myself going back into this and just continuing to do it. So does it mean that I miss news stories and I have no idea what you're talking about when you're talking about flies and beagles with Fauci? Like, yeah. So there's certain shit that I miss, but that's okay. Like,
you should go look that up.
I'm going to now, but I'm not upset that I originally missed it, right? But like, because this is the shit that dominates your life. And now there's like more impactful shit dominating my life. And I'm focusing on like trying to steer myself in that direction where I can make that type of an impact to other people. And then hopefully this like creates this snowball. Like, so yeah, I'm going to go look up the flies and but like, I don't have that shit on my phone. I log in every couple days and just check to make sure that like I didn't miss anything like super important. And guess what, man? Like 98% of the time since I took that shit off my phone, I haven't missed anything important, because you know what? If it's important enough and you're that important enough to me, you have my cell phone number and you can pick it up and give me a call, right? Or you can shoot me a text message. Like, we have way too many ways to get a hold of each other and feel like we need to do these certain things. And like, there's certain shit that like, it just takes away from the things that make me happy and that I want to do. So,
yeah, I think I said this to you, Tom, one time, but I felt like at one point, and I definitely don't do it nowhere near as much, but there was a point where I felt like I was scrolling through my phone constantly, like as if I was going to, like, all at once, I was going to see a tweet or something that like put an end to all this. Like, oh, Fauci's in jail and fucking Trump's the president again. And it's like, what am I doing? Like, what am I scrolling? What am I looking at my phone every 10 seconds to see what this? And then like Tommy said earlier, if there's anything that pissed me off over the course of about the first 6 months of the Biden administration, wasn't Biden. It was seeing Kevin McCarthy and Ted Cruz and just constantly pointing out the shit that was coming or was happening. And it's like, well, who the fuck's going to do something about it? You know what I mean? Right. Oh, they're going to take away our rights. Oh, here they go. They're coming for your gun. What are you doing about it? Yeah. And nothing was ever done. Like at every turn, they were like pointing out that our Constitution was being violated. And then it would just whatever it was they were talking about would happen, and then it'd be on to the next thing they're screaming about. And I'm like, what do politicians do besides scream about shit that's happening?
Some of them get blowjobs in the White House.
That's why, maybe Clinton had the right idea. Just fine. I wish that if that was to come out like Biden's getting BJs, and I'd be like, well, at least he's fucking doing something up there. At least that makes more sense. And instead, I just picture him slobbering.
Well, I don't know, boys, but it's been a long one. I think it's time to land this plane. But I know before we go, since we were talking about Nicki Minaj, Troy, who would you rather, Nicki Minaj or Cardi B?
Oof, that's fucking brutal. Nicki.
It is brutal.
Yes. No, see, he's team Nicki. I'm telling you, man, that's the way.
Well, I'm on team Nicki now, but it has nothing to do with anything other than because I think she's an American hero.
Yeah, I can't take Cardi.
I mean, I was full Cardi, and I still, but if it was marry, fuck, kill, and there's nobody to kill, I'm marrying Nicki Minaj, but I'm gonna fuck Cardi B.
And dude, you know what's funny too, Troy? The whole reason I think Danny's obsession with Cardi B was he told me this video where she was like eating fucking crab legs or something, like just licking her fingers and shit with like dirty ass crabs. And he was like, I don't know, man, I just fell in love with her.
No, because it was like she didn't give a fuck.
Real. It's just
like
real.
For instance, Nicki Minaj, when she came out and did her IG where she was whatever, she also chose to like point the phone up at the air and not show her face because she probably wasn't camera ready. And,
right.
And Cardi B's like, I'm gonna eat some crabs and tell your motherfuckers what the hell's going on right now.
Yeah.
And I thought, hey, that's pretty crazy. I mean, and the fact that she's sexy as hell.
Part of the reason it's Nicki for me. So this is a really fucking funny story, but when I worked for Walmart, I had responsibility for the Valley Stream store, which is basically like Jamaica Queens. The store manager, or he was a store manager at one time. Nicki Minaj actually was a cashier at that Walmart.
Nice.
Oh yeah.
Like managed her. He's like one of like my favorite people that I've ever worked with in my career. I actually talked to him this morning, but like, and she would walk into his office and she'd be like, Mr. Steve, I'm going to be a famous rapper someday. And he's like, all right, go ahead, get back on Register 18. Like,
did he say she was cool?
Yeah. He was dude, it was a $200 million store. It was one of the highest volume stores in the company. So like he had so many people coming in. He was just an approachable guy. So like,
$200 million store.
One store. Yeah.
Oh my God.
It's crazy.
It's wild, man.
Very wild.
But Troy, we appreciate you coming on, man. It's been a little bit since we had a guest, and I know we've talked about having you on for a little bit, and our schedules maybe just didn't really match up. But I'm glad you were able to make it. Hopefully, we don't get you in too much trouble.
Yeah, man, a pleasure. Nice to meet you as well. And you seem like a pretty knowledgeable dude on politics. We'll have to have you back.
Yeah, man. Anytime. I appreciate meeting you. I appreciate the conversation, and we'll do it again.
For sure.
All right, homie.
All right, brother. All right, well, Tom, it was a good combo. Your boy seems like a pretty cool dude. And he definitely seems like he knows his shit, which is cool because we don't.
Yeah. We're just winging it. Today is Wing It Wednesday.
Oh yeah. Wing It Wednesday. Every fucking Wednesday is Wing It Wednesday for us. But no, I mean, I enjoyed that combo. I'd like to, it just seems like I agree with you though. When you're like, I wasn't arguing your point of like, no, man, shit's going to change.
Right.
I'm just saying I see a light at the end and I see little steps that are reassuring me that light is there. But yeah, I mean, but shit doesn't look good at this juncture.
Dude, the thing that the light at the end of the tunnel that I see is a fucking mushroom cloud.
Well, that is the only the other thing. That's the thing that's scary though, is like, see, that's the part that I think gets this all convoluted. Is it's like on one angle, it's like as long as we're just relying on our country without any outside actors, then I see a light at this end of the tunnel. But if a lot of this shit is actually being stirred up by these you know, like you have the, like, seriously, I mean, you can call it a conspiracy, whatever, but you have either just the fact that for some reason they just all want us to get vaccinated. And it's just this weird, like, Democrats feel scared and they want you vaccinated, and Democrats are in office right now. So that's what they want you to be vaccinated, and Republicans are fighting for freedoms. I mean, that is bad enough. And then you have the added thing of like, is this a globalist thing? Is this, do they want to fucking document every move we make with the vax passport and then give us a global credit score, yada, yada. And then that level of it gets fucking scarier. And then is it China doing this shit to us because they want to fucking, I mean, I don't see what they would do to us, but I guess China taking over Taiwan and Russia going for Ukraine and Pakistan going for India is what I've read as well. Like that kind of shit gets scary. Like there are some people that think we're on the cusp of a world war situation, which is scary. And I don't know, because it's a lot of those factors have, like, I don't think America wants a World War III, but I feel like America is dumb enough right now, as in the people are dumb enough to keep playing into this dumb shit and making us weak and weak and weak.
I'm going to tell you why I think so, because it solves two problems. It solves the population, which people, you know, there's elitists and certain people that are afraid of the population is outgrowing what the Earth's capable of holding. And like I said earlier, after a war, there is, you know, there's financial gains to be made. You got to rebuild. People are going to get back to work. You know what I mean? So
yeah, well, I've been holding all these thoughts in, and now all of a sudden you're fucking full blown. You're telling me there's fucking Chinese guys in the ships, dude. I want to send you an article in a minute because I'm not kidding, dude. It's one of the things I didn't even want to mention to you because I was like, I even wanted to mention it almost as being funny, but I'm like, Tommy will think I'm fucking crazy.
No, dude, it just came to me as I was thinking. I was just dude, I was like, they're fucking coming from China and fucking, I was like, I don't fucking know.
No, there's literally videos of like fucking vets that are like, they're coming, man. You think those ships are just sitting there for no reason? They're filled with fucking Chinamen and they're waiting to take over our shores.
It's going to be D-Day #2. C-Day.
I'll tell you what though, dude. If that's the one that we're laughing about and fucking 3 months from now, we're looking at each other like,
they're fucking That's fucking
all right.
Chinese fucking soldiers.
All right, Tom, protect yourself from the Chinese soldiers that are sitting on the coast. Remember, guys, you heard it from Tommy first. There's Chinamen sitting in container ships off the coast of California, and we're about to be invaded.
There's fucking thousands of pounds of rice in there. They're just fucking chomping away on. They're just rice and fucking water, and they're like just fucking waiting to fucking invade California.
And they don't even care. It's like being at home for them.
Yeah, they're like, fuck it. It's a fucking fancy condo for them. And those fucking shipping containers.
They don't want to get out.
Yeah.
All right, Tom. See you.
All right. Later, bro.